All right. Clemson's not good, but Clemson's lucky. Boston College goes down at the home of the Tigers. The ACC now looks to Dave Clawson. Dave Clawson, you are king of the ACC. You own the ACC. The ACC should do anything you demand. The ACC is now relevant only because of Wake Forest. ACC fans, whether you root for Miami, Clemson, Florida State, whomever, gear up with black and gold, Demon Deacons colors. Wake Forest, you rule the ACC. You own the ACC, and you are the college football playoff representative candidate for the ACC. The Big Ten, pretty much still what we thought it was entering the day. Michigan goes to Wisconsin, answers many questions. Ohio State breaks out. Will it last? Will it last against quality competition? I don't know. Good indication for the Buckeyes today. Penn State owning Indiana and laying down the D tonight. Oklahoma. Have we seen this before? I believe we have. Oklahoma against a mediocre marginal team. Just good enough. Just good enough. Texas wins. Maybe Texas is the team to take down Oklahoma. We will see the Red River rivalry next week. Oregon, possibly the result of the day. Oregon goes down. Stanford better and smarter than Oregon. Stanford smarter than all of us. May have outsmarted itself, though, if it wants the best for the Pac-12. The Pac-12, you may be gone as well. And then finally in the SEC, Arkansas is building. They're up and coming. Ole Miss, they're fun to watch. They're entertaining. But let's face it, Alabama and Georgia, they're just playing a different sport right now. Welcome into the Voice of College Football, our Week 5 wrap-up show on a Saturday night with all of you. It's great to have you here at the Voice of College Football. Our phone lines are open here at 860-499-3332. Meanwhile, I will let you know everything that we've got available to you. You don't have to settle for me. We've got post-game shows going on tonight. Florida, as the Gators lost to the Kentucky Wildcats, a game I failed to mention in my open, but another big result in the SEC involves the Cats over the Gators in Lexington. So Kentucky football now 5-0, not just Bama and Georgia. Kentucky football 5-0. Auburn and LSU getting it on right now in Death Valley. The Tigers of LSU, the Bayou Bengals, holding on to a 13-10 lead right now. Arizona State and UCLA have kicked off at the Rose Bowl. And again, the phone lines are open at 860-499-3332. I will post that number in just a second as soon as I get to the live chat and check out what you all have to say right now. Also want to run through the scoreboard, of course, as we typically do on a Saturday night to get everything rolling. Good to see everybody here. Many of the old-time favorites, many of you standbys are here. Good to see you. Of course, you guys are the core. You built this thing. But also good to see some new folks. So if you are new to the chat, please let me know. Would love to know who you root for and how long you've been watching the Voice of College Football. But again, you don't have to settle for me. We've got post-game shows all over the place. We've got 26 total channels and post-game shows going on today, this afternoon, this evening, and late night tonight, featuring LSU, Florida, Texas A&M, Penn State as well. Check those out on our Penn State and Big Ten channels, Florida and SEC channels, Texas A&M as well on the SEC channel. Mouse here. Someone check on George. The Gators lost. They did lose. But you know what? I saw George in the live chat. George is real. George is a stand-up guy. DeReal MVP. Can't believe my Cats beat the Gators. Louisville looked good, even though they lost. Proud of both teams. Yeah, Louisville taking Wake down to the wire. The Demon Deacons kick a game-winning field goal against the Cardinals to win 37-34. And I saw just about every play of Florida-Kentucky. That was one of the games I truly wanted to see tonight. And Kentucky won. DeReal MVP. If you would latch on to my predictions, you would have known Kentucky wins. Pick the Cats over the Gators straight up in that one. Yeah, big night for Wan'Dale Robinson. Also, the big guy, Pascal, on the defensive side was amazing, probably as was stated during the broadcast. Bob, trying to think who was doing the game. Dan Orlovsky said Pascal on defense, best player on the field. Best player on the field. Robinson might be the best wide receiver in the SEC. Might be the best wide receiver in the SEC. Treylon Burks, John Mechie. Some of those Georgia receivers like Kyrus Jackson and others, some of the younger ones in particular, they are in the more development stage. He is really good, yes. Charles Pinster, another whiff by Scott Fraud. I'm not familiar with that individual. All right. Mike, 3883. Yes. How about that result from this afternoon? I failed to mention that one. Just too many storylines and too many key games today. Cincinnati goes to Notre Dame. They go to South Bend. And the game was up in the air until about 5 minutes left, but Cincinnati was clearly the better team. Notre Dame used all three quarterbacks, Cone, Pine, and Buckner. They settled on Buckner. They settled on Pine, I believe. They settled on, was it Pine or Buckner? Now I can't remember late in the game. They went the dual threat route, and they started to generate some offense in the fourth quarter. They finally scored just at the end of the third quarter, going into the fourth quarter to make it a 17-7 lead after they fell down by 17. And Notre Dame missed on some key plays. They had a couple big drops with 4 or 5 minutes left. They could have extended a drive to take the lead. They were down 17-13, and their star wide receiver, Kevin Austin, dropped 2 passes. Cincinnati took over, and the Bearcats win it. Yes, Cincinnati in prime position. Now they are just hoping that Indiana and particularly Notre Dame play well. They need them to rack up wins. No Cal Matt. Stanford. Yes, look at the Cardinal beating up on the Ducks today. They needed a number of things to go their way late in the fourth quarter, and they got it done. DeReal MVP. Did I set this up for the wrong date? Yeah, maybe it defaulted. It probably defaulted to tomorrow is probably what you got. Unfortunately, I apologize for that. The default settings typically for the next day, but I put it for 11 p.m. Yes, I did. Well, Kevin, it depends on the week with many of those teams, Stanford included. It depends on the week. Look at these teams in college football. Look at them. They're not the same team every week. And this is pretty much what college football used to be. You used to have about 4 categories of teams. You had an elite. They were very few. And right now it may be just 2 teams. But you probably have the potential for Ohio State. I don't think that they solved anything tonight. I don't think that Ohio State necessarily by beating Rutgers like a drum. 45 points in one half, though, is pretty convincing. And Rutgers is a decent team. Rutgers is a fringe bowl team. So Ohio State didn't show it against anybody like Michigan showed it today against Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's got their issues, and they are horrendous on offense. And it's not because of Graham Mertz, first and foremost. Graham Mertz is not playing well, but he played pretty well today, and he looked like a superstar for about a drive or two. But that Wisconsin offensive line, I don't know what happened there, but that is their chief concern there at Wisconsin. But the point being that Michigan proved it today against a much better product than what Ohio State did. But the Buckeyes putting up 45 points in the first half shows some life And they're the one roster in the nation, even more so than Oklahoma, that potentially could give Georgia or Alabama a game. Do I believe that today? Do I believe that if they stepped on the field tomorrow? No, I don't. But they have the potential because of what we know about the talent on the roster. Otherwise, this is going to be Georgia and Alabama bludgeoning two teams in the playoffs and then facing off for a second time in the national championship game after giving us most likely a classic in the SEC championship game. But that's what it looks like right now. The way this college football season is going, it's going to give us something that none of us are predicting right now. And I hope that is the case. Kevin Finnerty is going to be watching the Bucs-Patriots game at this time tomorrow. Thanks for the update, Kevin. Appreciate that. That game might be like a 3-touchdown blowout at this point at almost midnight Eastern time tomorrow night. There you go. The real MVP knows. Roberto, I thought this was for tomorrow. Okay. Man. Yeah. So if that defaulted to tomorrow, I would think that would happen all the time. So I apologize. Again, the default settings for the next day. What a day for college football. So I am surprised that I don't do that all the time. Yes, it was a phenomenal day of college football. Michigan shows up at noon. They play a muscle-up half with Wisconsin. The Badgers fought back from 10 down. They made it a game at halftime. Graham Mertz showed us his talent for a couple passes to get them back in the game. And then Michigan actually went to the pass to produce points and yardage in the second half and beat Wisconsin in a huge Big Ten matchup, 38-17. At the same time, Georgia was completely dominating Arkansas, making the Hogs look like pigs, making them look disgusting, making them look like little kids. Georgia just buried Arkansas. That was like watching Georgia a couple weeks ago against UAB. Like it was no difference. That was Georgia showing that they're an elite team. They're a devastating crew on defense. They're elite talent. And Arkansas is up and coming. Arkansas is on the way. Arkansas is building. Sam Pittman has done a phenomenal job, but this is a team, this is a program that was losing every game in the SEC 2 years ago. That took a tremendous stride last year in Sam Pittman's first year just to win 3 games and be respectable. And took another leap forward this year. And I hope that this isn't going to derail Arkansas's season. I hope that they can rebound from this bludgeoning today, learn from it, and get back to the business of football and improving day by day, and understand that they ran into a buzzsaw and they weren't ready. This just wasn't Georgia dominance. It was mostly Georgia dominance and Georgia just flat out being too much for Arkansas, but it was also the Hogs not being big enough for the stage. And I don't believe that. I'm not the kind of guy that analyzes these games and really looks into it from the psychological standpoint very often, but it was just obvious. Arkansas was making mental mistakes constantly in this game. They look like the proverbial deer in the headlights. They did. It appears as though I lost my phone line here. Let's get it back. What happened? I believe we got it back, and we've got a caller on the line here at the Voice of College Football. Let's get it cranked up for tonight. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hello, Mark. It's the real MVP. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. What's going on?
Well, you may have seen it, the Mark Kentucky Wild. It's the second time in like 45 years or something crazy like that.
That they beat Florida.
Yeah, I know.
Yep.
That was a pretty big result. I want to go into the reason why I thought all week and this is going to make it. There's no analytics, no stats, but this is from the Kentucky man's perspective. There was an SEC short a few years ago where a Florida man would deliver a pizza that was in the shape of an L, and he gave this speech saying, you know, that weird feeling in your stomach, that's you knowing that you're going to lose to Florida, and that even though you go out and play them, you're going to lose. And for whatever reason, this year, and like your preview guy said for Kentucky, Florida, the Kentucky writer, that he didn't have that feeling. There was just a feeling in this game that told me to go with Kentucky. And I also want to thank you, Mark, for giving the predictions on Kentucky. I made quite a bit tonight. If you're not subscribed to Mark's Patreon page, please do. You're going to, I mean, with how Mark is with making predictions and stuff, you're going to make your returns right now as the last few weeks. I mean, it's crazy.
We hope so, the real MVP. I appreciate the plug there. Thank you for that. I am not a professional.
No problem.
I go.
I know
with,
you're not a professional, but when you do good, I've got to give you credit, man.
I watch a lot of football. I'm not a professional.
You're on fire this year.
I'm actually below expectations this year. But back to your Cats. That's the important thing. I enjoyed the game. Yeah. Why did I pick the Cats? I picked the Cats because I believe in that defense. I thought that they would clean up their turnover issues that we talked about, and I talked about with our Kentucky guy, Kevin McGuffey, that they were negative 11-2 in the turnover category. And I knew that Mark Stoops would make that a point of emphasis this week. They would take care of the football, make a special play on special teams, which they did. That was a remarkable play on the blocked field goal, taken all the way back. Pascal made the blocked kick as well. The defense played extremely well. As you mentioned in the live chat, Wan'Dale Robinson just brings them something on offense that they haven't had in a long time.
Yeah, Wan'Dale Robinson, from fans' perspective, is the best wide receiver we've had since Randall Cobb back in 2013.
Yeah.
And he reminds me a lot of him, where he can do a bunch of different things, and he can be used in the run game, the jet sweep type of play game where he can be a deep threat. He can touch a screen and turn it into it. I mean, a lot of our, even though that touchdown was considered a throw, I consider that just an extended run play, because it was like a 0-yard pass forward, and then he just cooked the Florida defense. I mean, it was amazing what he did. But other than I think Pascal earned a lot of money, because of how he's going to be drafted in the NFL because of this game. I mean, that man's a monster.
Yeah.
Like he was solid against South Carolina and stuff and Missouri. But, doing it against a school like Florida, where Florida pushed around. I mean, let's not get ourselves. Florida's still got a good O-line, a good D-line, because they were able to push around Alabama on both sides of the ball. You've got to be good to do that. I don't care what anybody says. But for him to go in there and just single-handedly be in the backfield, I was like every other play, Emory Jones was running for his life. It was insane. The mental mistakes Florida was making, I did not. I mean, Florida had 8 false starts. 8 false starts? How? I mean, Mark, have you ever seen that?
If you don't watch Nebraska football, then you haven't seen it. But if you watch the Huskers play on a regular basis, you see that, yes. But everybody else, no, nothing close to that.
I am not. Believe it or not, Mark, I don't go out of the way and watch Nebraska football.
Yeah, they false start like every other play.
I mean, that's what it was like here. And I've got to. Sorry, you gave credit to that defense, but I don't know how many teams in the country can stop a team first and goal 8 plays in a row. I don't, honestly. Georgia, Iowa, and the list starts running thin after that. 8 plays in a row, that's elite. And old Kentucky teams in the past with old head coaches, they would have made such silly mental lapse, left a wide receiver wide open. a blocker miss an assignment and he runs it in for a touchdown. I mean, it's just incredible what Mark Stoops has done. It's incredible. This is you talked about Arkansas being on the rise quickly because of Sam Pittman. Kentucky's slowly been on the rise for a very long time. And is it crazy to say we're maybe not even a top half SEC team, but maybe a top 5 program in the SEC?
Alabama, Georgia, then it's up for grabs. It's up for grabs after those two. It ain't Texas A&M, that's for sure.
Yeah, Texas A&M is, again, I got to give you credit. You didn't have them in the rankings because they didn't deserve it, and they showed on the field they don't deserve to be in any rankings. I mean, how do you think Texas A&M fans feel about Jimbo Fisher's contract extension right now?
Why? Why do you give a contract extension to a coach that you just dumped a truckload of money on a couple of years ago, and he is yet to deliver on what you originally paid him for? Where is he going to go? Where is he going that you need to secure him with a contract extension? That was just the dumbest thing imaginable.
Yeah, well, you know who they play next week?
Alabama. Ouch.
That's an L.
3-3.
That's an L. And remember what Jimbo Fisher said, the booster?
Yeah.
You don't think Nick Saban's going to use that for bulletin board material? That game might be worse than Georgia, Arkansas today. I mean, honestly, that game could be 60-0.
I truly believe that Nick Saban appreciates Jimbo Fisher for coaching on his coaching staff. He respects him. He, again, appreciates what he did for him, similar to he appreciates and means every word he says about Lane Kiffin and how brilliant he is and how he helped them rejuvenate their offense, restructure their offense, obviously bring it up to date and do everything that he did. But yes, Nick Saban wants to beat everybody, but when he sees somebody come to town that is a former assistant, when he is the mentor and they are the pupil from years ago, yes, just look at how he performs and how his teams perform. I think we're at 24-0 now, and that was a butt kicking today. And I expect it to be one next week. His team's going to be laser focused, just like they were today.
Yep. That's, by the way, 24-0 against your former assistant.
Yeah.
Especially for where they're at, is incredible.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, we always say how good
absolutely.
Nick Saban is, but it's
his former assistants aren't going to Georgia Southern and UT Chattanooga. Yeah, it's phenomenal.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask you, is it possible for next week that we have 2 Big Ten teams ranked in the top 4 and not be Ohio State?
Sure. You talking about the AP poll? You talking about other rankings that I may have something to do
and maybe
with?
even your poll. Maybe even your poll. I mean, Penn State and I was looking pretty good.
Well, I think that was my top 5 minus Oregon last week. And obviously they're long gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a heck of a game next week.
Heck of a game, yeah.
They play next week.
Yep.
And do you think, where would Cincinnati fit in the picture right now? I'm struggling. I think they're 3 through 6 is a reasonable spot for them.
Yeah.
But I think Iowa, Penn State, they're going to sort themselves out. They're going to play on the field.
Sure.
But Cincinnati, I mean, I don't want to say dominated Notre Dame, but the game was never in question, in my opinion.
Nope.
Even when it was close.
Yeah, they were the better team. It was something similar to Arkansas and Texas A&M last week, where Arkansas let them get within a touchdown, but they were whipping them along the line of scrimmage and outplaying them and had control of the game. Same thing with Cincinnati today. Yes.
And now with Florida out of the playoff picture for sure, Oregon's, in my opinion, Oregon's done. Unless absolute madness happens, I think they're done. And with Notre Dame, they knocked out Notre Dame. I mean, it's looking like Cincinnati's got a real shot to be in here, just not because of their strength of schedule or anything, just because they're undefeated. And there's not going to be a whole lot of one-loss teams left. I mean, you got Alabama, Georgia. But going 3 through maybe even 15, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's real hard this year. I mean, in years past, you could be like, okay, Oklahoma, Ohio State is in. Texas and Iowa State's going to be okay. They're not going to quite make it in. Penn State, Wisconsin. But this year, I mean, you just pick a card out of a hat almost, and you'd be as accurate. It's insane.
I think a Big Ten champion is safe as long as they only have one loss. I kind of question the comparison between, let's say, in Oklahoma, if they trip up because they've been so mediocre, or Oregon, now that they've tripped up. A one-loss Pac-12 or Big 12 team or a one-loss ACC team against a undefeated Cincinnati team is going to be a tough call for the committee.
I know. Well, especially with, I mean, SMU might be a big win for Cincinnati.
Yeah.
It might be a ranked win. They're 5-0 right now. They beat TCU, who's a solid team. At TCU, they get UCF, and they might have to play Memphis. I mean, these aren't horrible opponents that they're playing every week. Now, they got some bad ones like East Carolina, Tulane, who's a little bit on the, not FCS level, but a little bit above it. But Cincinnati's got a shot, a real shot. What are your thoughts about BYU making it after this week? Do they have a shot?
I think that BYU is going to have to go undefeated, of course, and they're going to have to be matched up against a two-loss team. The comparison is going to have to come down to BYU and a two-loss team. They're going to have a number of nice wins, but they're not going to have. So they've already knocked off Arizona State and Utah. So again, it goes back to having those teams finish out and play pretty well. We know that neither one of those teams are great teams, but if they can be 8-4, 9-3 teams, they got Baylor coming up in 2 weeks. Baylor, of course, lost tonight, so that ruined the undefeated matchup. But again, let's not hope for something unrealistic like Baylor goes 11-1. Let's say Baylor goes, if they can go 9-3, if they can rack up those kind of wins. They got USC at the end of the year. They've got Boise State, who lost again today, though. Boise State's down to 3 losses, so they're not going to help them out. I went through the schedule last night. I posted a BYU video after the game, and I went through their schedule. They've got a lot of decent, games to deal with, but not anything that's going to give them the kind of pop that they need. USC, Virginia, Baylor, Boise State, I think, is it. I just don't think any of that really. Yep.
I was going to say this might be the year where consistency matters more than those big wins. Because you're having unranked teams beat ranked teams. Something like half of the top 25 at week 1 is out completely. And that's without Clemson, by the way, being out. So it broke the record, and it would have even broken the record more. So I think consistency is going to matter a whole lot this season.
To real MVP, you've got to understand that when you pose these kind of questions to me, there's a difference between the way I would approach it versus you asking me to predict what the committee's going to do. Who knows what they're going to do?
Yeah, the committee's been proven, in my opinion, not to be trustworthy because they say they don't look at final scores or anything like that. I mean, come on. You're telling me a 1-point win against like a Bowling Green is the same as a 60-point win against Bowling Green? or Oklahoma barely scraping them by is the same as Georgia obliterating everybody.
Oh, they look at performance. There's no question about that. You have to.
Yeah, but the commissioner has said they don't look at the score. He's openly said that before on the ESPN ranking show, whatever they do, whatever it's called.
Then if that's the case, then why watch the games? They say that they watch all the games. All you would need to do is open up the standings. All you would do is look at all the conference standings, and then you would select your teams based on the wins and losses.
Hey, I'm not the commissioner or anybody like that. I think it's a terrible system and it needs to go to some other form. And I think a lot of people are on that train. That's a whole separate issue with the committee.
All right, to Real MVP, I'm going to pick up these other callers. I appreciate you calling in tonight.
It was good talking to you.
Absolutely. Always is. Congrats on the wins today.
Have a great show, Mark.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Talk to you later. Welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hello, it's me, Roberto.
Hey, Roberto. What's going on?
Well, it's a big, big day for the state of Ohio. With two big wins. Well, my Buckeyes winning big on the road against the Scarlet Knights, and Cincinnati making a big statement win against Notre Dame.
They did that.
My goodness, CJ Stroud was just super phenomenal today. Very accurate, very poised, very confident, and just put on a show. I think and the Buckeyes got 3 games in a row with pick sixes. That's how you make a defense click.
Yeah, good news for the Buckeyes. Good indicator there. I'm not going to say that they played the best team in the world, but certainly the same team that went to Michigan last week and made it a one-score game and took the Wolverines right down to the wire. And Michigan turns around and goes to 5-0, beat up on Wisconsin. So I know that Rutgers was ready for that game. I know that I heard Greg Schiano talk about it this week, that he implored the student body and the fans, the students, to be loud and to be ready, and he wanted to create an atmosphere of a true home field advantage. I don't know how possible that is in Piscataway at this point, but he was doing his best, and so they knew this was a big game. And of course, they've never beaten Ohio State, so they had to have been giving it all they've got, and Ohio State just obliterated them in the first half, and then the second half was just basically a run through.
Yeah. No, some show. What was I going to say? You get nervous. I don't know what's going on with me. I get very nervous when I get the phone calls here.
You're good. Well, what else you got?
Okay. So, I think it was going to be an easy. My opinion, it was going to be an easy win. All I had to do is stop any trick play that Greg Schiano was going to pull. And I guess, I don't know what happened. He stopped doing. He didn't want to do it after that fake punt. Because not only that we made the deflection, but that was almost a pick six by Cam Martinez. I think Ryan Day was very aware to watch for any trickery that Greg Schiano was going to pull in that game. And my goodness, that that game just ended immediately.
Well, I think especially college coaches have to be cognizant of the mindset and the confidence of their team and the morale of their team. They have to protect the psyche of their team. And I think when you're playing at Ohio State and you're Rutgers, and you're improving, you're developing, you're so much better than you were 2 years ago, and you want to continue on that. You don't want a game like this to derail you. You don't want a 45-6 halftime score to set you back to where you were a year ago. And so when you go for the gusto, you pull off a fake punt or attempt to because you're trying to legitimately win the game, and then you determine within the first couple drives of the game that you cannot beat this team. You're down whatever 31-6 by the beginning of the second quarter, that you then want to go into shutdown mode, and you don't want to get embarrassed and have your team be demoralized. And so then you try to protect your team, protect the score, and try to get out of there so you can continue to improve and not let this game just completely send them reeling.
Well, that's a lot. I'm sorry.
All right, Roberto.
Speechless.
Anything else?
Oh, I'm talking about probably the big matchup next week coming up with Penn State and Iowa going into Kinnick Stadium. That's going to be a major matchup. You think it's going to be a low-scoring one?
I do.
How many turnovers? Yeah. It's going to be a very tough environment for Penn State.
The two quarterbacks don't have to play phenomenal football. They don't have to create a ton of dynamic plays, but they've got to protect the football, and they've got to convert on third down. The Iowa Hawkeyes turn over the opposing offense unlike anybody else in the nation, and we'll see if that continues. It seems like it's something that's not sustainable, but it has been through 5 games. And so now they take their shot at Sean Clifford. So yes, it's a home field advantage that's one of the very best in the country, and Sean Clifford has not performed under those conditions very well in the past, but he seems to be a much better player this year. All right, Roberto, I appreciate it. I'm going to move on to some other calls, but glad you enjoyed the Ohio State and Cincinnati wins today. Have a good one.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, welcome into the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark.
I'm sorry, who is this?
We have 2 callers.
Seems like we've got an issue on the line.
2 of us.
Uh-oh. Don't know how to. I'm just going to press one button and let somebody go. I apologize for whomever that is because it double-clicked and I got 2 calls in on the line at the same time. We could have had ourselves a little conference call, I guess. But anyway, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark. This is Nick. How's it going?
I'm good. How you doing tonight?
Good. Doing pretty good. We had quite a Saturday of college football. Definitely lived up to expectations. Not a letdown, I'd say, but wanted to get your thoughts on the Iowa-Maryland game. Don't know how much of that you caught, but I guess my main thing is, do you think their defense with these turnovers I understand that people are saying that this is just kind of what they look like, but do you think this is sustainable at this rate? Because it's kind of getting insane.
So I watched as much of the game as I needed to watch, as much as was important. Once it got completely out of hand, then it didn't matter to watch it anymore, and I moved on and watched BYU and Utah State. So I watched until it was 31-7, something in that range. So Kirk Ferentz and his coaching staff, they have been teaching this kind of defense, and I apologize, I can't remember the name of their defensive coordinator right now. But if you go back years and years and years to the beginning of his tenure, they have caused more turnovers than any program in the country. They're in the top 1 or 2, maybe possibly 3. So this is something that is sustainable in regards to this is the way they play defense on a yearly basis, and this is the way they play football, and this is one of the key to their successes most years. Now, yes, they have raised that degree of turnovers to a ridiculous degree that is it sustainable? It's sustainable to the point that they've always made it sustainable. I don't think it's sustainable to the degree at which they've been able to produce turnovers through the first 5 games of the season. Not against the good teams, at least, but they're still going to win the turnover battle against just about everybody. But I don't think that they can keep up this pace. But I said that 2 weeks ago, and they continue to keep up this pace. But the odds say that they can't.
Okay. Well, it's going to be interesting next week. I think it's next week that Penn State plays Iowa. It's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. I like Penn State, but I don't know. Would you consider it alarming that you're I know it's kind of improv, but on the fly, as Penn State seems their best rusher seems to be their quarterback. Like they can't really run. I wouldn't consider them a very good running team.
Yeah, and I don't think that has much to do with their running backs. I think Devin Ford and Noah Cain and Kevontae Lee are good running backs, especially Ford and especially Cain are capable running backs. I think that has more to do with the Penn State offensive line. And Sean Clifford has actually improved as a runner and has found he has found a balance between running and throwing and making the proper decision most of the time on when to take off. And he's made that part of his game starting pretty much last season. He had over 100 yards rushing in the opener last season against Indiana. And that's really the first time I noticed it. There's something similar to Nebraska comes to mind. I'm trying to think who else comes to mind. Virginia comes to mind, where they don't get rushing yards from the running back position. They get it from the quarterback position. That's not. Now you talk about something that's not sustainable in terms of winning. I don't know if that's sustainable because he's not Michael Vick or Lamar Jackson. Let's see what they did on the ground tonight.
Yeah, and what about,
I didn't see. I had the game on like a third screen, but I wasn't paying that much attention since they had it pretty well in hand. But
yeah, and what a bounce back by Ohio State, huh? That's pretty. I thought that was a really impressive game today by them. I think we've kind of heard it from you, and I've kind of felt this way warning people. And at the very least, you have to say this is the first step of them figuring it out. I thought CJ Stroud looked a lot better, a lot more confident. His mechanics were looking a lot more solid today. You saw Rutgers give Michigan a scare last week, and I know transient properties are not always, it's matchup versus matchup based, but I don't know. I at least me personally, I was really impressed with Ohio State.
Yeah, I find it funny, people's responses to the current game. People overreact to the game that was just played. So I don't know how many people called me a moron and an idiot when I picked Ohio State to go 11-1 because they felt as though it was impossible for Ohio State to lose a game this year, that they were at least 2 touchdowns better than everybody on the schedule. And I said that they would lose to either Oregon or to Penn State. But I would not have been surprised had they gone undefeated. I was just making a prediction. So people overreacted to that. But then as soon as Ohio State lost a game, and all I stated on here a number of times was that maybe Ohio State had serious issues. I still believe that they have issues, and I thought that the issues were real. And with the improvement of Penn State, Michigan State, fortunately for Ohio State, they don't have to play Wisconsin, and some people may laugh at that, but Wisconsin's still a quality opponent. And again, I'm talking weeks ago when we thought Wisconsin was better, and not having to play Iowa in the regular season, that
Well, and their
I-
defense, Wisconsin, not to cut you off, but their defense. I mean, people might be laughing at the offense, but anyone who
defense
questions
is-
their defense
oh.
is an idiot.
It's a top 5 to 10 defense in the country. And so all I stated on here was that Ohio State had real issues, real concerns that had to be fixed, and they wouldn't be easy to fix. But it would not surprise me in any such way if we were sitting here at the end of the season and Ohio State was 11-1 at the end of the regular season. That would not surprise me at all. And it seemed like practically the same people who thought it was impossible for Ohio State to lose a game after they lost to Oregon and looked pretty bad against Tulsa thought that there was just no way that Ohio State could avoid 3 or 4 losses this year. So we tend to fly all over the place in our evaluations. So Ohio State's an elite roster that has defensive issues and tremendous talent and coaching, and they still have issues, but they took a giant leap forward today against a decent top 50 opponent, top 50 to 60 opponent.
Well, yeah, Rutgers is solid. I think Ohio State put the smack down, and I think maybe C.J. Stroud got a fire lit under him a little bit. I mean, the narrative, or at least the official statement, was that he's sitting because of an injury, but I mean, he might have got a little ticked off and said, "You guys think I can't throw? Well, I mean, I actually can. So here you go, take that." So I think Ohio State is going to be right in there. I actually, before the season and stuck with it the whole time, I predicted them to go 10-2. I wouldn't be shocked to see them lose another game, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they won out.
Sure.
I mean, and made the playoffs. So, and then lastly, and then I'll let you go here because I know you got some other callers, and I think I went ahead of the last guy who, whatever that conference call issue was, but Michigan. I think it's getting a little bit more difficult now. The whole narrative that they can't pass or don't buy into they just haven't passed because they haven't had to. I think today was actually kind of interesting because I didn't think Cade McNamara was great, but we saw Rutgers kind of punch back last week against Michigan. And Wisconsin did the same thing with Graham Mertz at the end of the half, but it was a little bit different this week because they actually hit back. And at least in my opinion, over the last few years, it seems like that's very rare for a team under Jim Harbaugh to continually punch back. Like Cade McNamara, like there were plenty of incompletions in the passing game. It was definitely not a perfect game in the air, but the running game wasn't great. I mean, if you consider the opponent in Wisconsin, yeah, they rushed for more than anybody else has on them all year by far, but regardless, I think they just averaged about 2.3 yards per carry, which is not great, but I really liked how they kept swinging today. They weren't afraid. They didn't abandon anything. They were aggressive. You saw it from the get-go with multiple fourth downs or going for it on fourth down. So, yeah, I'll let you go here, but just wanted to get your thoughts on that real quick. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks so much for the call. Appreciate it. I will comment on Michigan as soon as I run down a couple super chats. We got one in from Vandy Dandy. Appreciate that. Thank you so much, Vandy Dandy. And the last I saw out of the Commodores tonight, they were playing in a driving rainstorm, and they were up 10-9 against the mighty Huskies of UConn. Also, Dave Valensky, thank you so much for the super chat contribution. Appreciate that. We've got Dave with Iowa is in the driver's seat to win the West Division. Yes, they are. Everybody else has lost a game, correct? Yes, Minnesota beat Purdue today. Everybody has lost at least one game in the West Division. Therefore, Iowa would be in the driver's seat, especially now that Wisconsin has lost twice, because Iowa goes to Wisconsin. Of course, if they had remained with one loss, then they would have the chance to win at home and have the tiebreaker. Iowa is in the driver's seat, yes. Next week's Penn State game is huge for them. They would have to go undefeated back-to-back. They would have to go undefeated back to college football playoffs. As a Gopher fan, that's hard to say, but it's the truth. I believe what Dave is saying is that he believes that Iowa needs to go undefeated to go to the college football playoffs. That would certainly help. There would be no way, I would think, that you could deny Iowa from the playoffs if they go undefeated. I would hope that a one-loss Iowa team, let's say Iowa loses once, and let's say that's coming up this week against Penn State. They lose, even if they lose by 2 scores. Let's say they lose 27-14 to Penn State. Penn State goes on to a 9-3, 10-2, 11-1 kind of year, something in that range. They're a good team. They're top 5 to 15 in the nation. Iowa beats them in a rematch or beats Ohio State in a Big Ten championship game as a 12-1 Big Ten champion. I cannot imagine that Iowa would not go to the playoff. The only valid way that I could see Iowa not getting to the playoff at 12-1 as the Big Ten champion is if we have 2 undefeated teams in the SEC, Georgia, Alabama, that play in the SEC championship game and play an all-time classic kind of game. So we've got a one-loss team in the SEC that lost the conference championship game. And then we also have a Wake Forest team that runs the table, wins the ACC. So there's 3 spots. And then we've got Cincinnati, who goes undefeated. Or somebody else who else could go undefeated? Oklahoma State could go undefeated. They still have no losses. Who else has no losses out there? If there are undefeated conference champions elsewhere, that is the only way that Iowa should be left out of the playoff, or any other Big Ten champion should be the only way. But then again, I'm not on the committee, and they have made some questionable calls in the past. And their logic has changed from week to week and season to season, and the answers that they give about the decisions in which they make. Christ Savior 888, thank you so much for the Super Chat contribution. Appreciate that so much. Sparty on. I did not know that you were a Spartans fan. Michigan State beats Western Kentucky to stay undefeated at 5-0. Christ Savior 888, thank you so much for the contribution. And is appropriate 777 is the contribution there. Jesus Christ is the only way to heaven. Amen. I believe I said that with 4 A's. Okay. Next up on the Super Chats, we've got one coming in. I'm looking for it. It's red. It's red. Where is it? Or is that the one that I just read from Dave Valensky? I think I got them all. All right. Next up on the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Jeremiah.
Hey, Jeremiah.
I think it's a good boy.
Am I the one? Are you the one that I cut off?
Yeah.
I apologize for that. I'm sorry. I must have like double clicked. I don't know what I did. I don't know how I picked up 2 phone calls at once. I didn't even know that was possible.
Well, I guess you learn new things every single time. Yeah. Well, Texas came out in a dogfight with TCU, and I think Bijan is going to be a real good star player. I mean, he basically put the team on his back and then just gave us the win in a game that, you know, the rest of our team, other than our O-line and our defense, I mean, our quarterback and our receiver just completely dropped the ball this game from 70-35 win over Texas Tech. Did you watch it?
I saw some of it. I had it on the screen. Arkansas, Georgia, Michigan, Wisconsin. That was my 3rd game at noon, so I had it up there the whole time. I can't say that I really diagnosed it, I got to say that anybody that's watched football for any length of time, as soon as I got a chance to see Bijan Robinson run with a football, I knew that he was something special. That was pretty obvious.
Yeah, I think he's a Heisman candidate this year because I don't think anyone's emerged. I think Corral from Ole Miss kind of dropped the ball today versus Alabama. I don't think anyone's emerged out of Georgia, even though they've been dominant. And other than Bryce Young from Alabama, I haven't really seen. Who do you think are the top 5 Heisman frontrunners to you so far this season, of October?
Well, I can tell you who I think are the best players in the country. I can't really tell you. I think it's kind of foolish for me to try to predict what other people are going to vote on. You know, it's one thing for me to predict football games, but for me to predict what other people are going to vote, I don't know those people. I don't know what they value. So in terms of Heisman candidates, this is something that is, as for some reason, I used to get into the Heisman race a long, long time ago, but for the last, I don't know how many years, it just kind of doesn't interest me. But okay, best players in the country. And this is the other thing. It's not the best player in the country. It's the best quarterback, running back, or wide receiver in the country. It's not the best player in the country. So we have to keep that in mind too. So we're eliminating all the other players in the country, all the other positions. They don't count. So it's a skill position player award. It's not the best player in the country. So Bijan Robinson's obviously there. And I don't have stat sheets in front of me to weigh these guys. But Bryce Young is obviously phenomenal. He's off to a great start. I did see a list of his touchdown and interception numbers through 5 games compared to Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, and Mac Jones. And he was just even blew those 3 away. And they were phenomenal, of course. Let's see who else would be out there. Of course, Spencer Rattler and Sam Howell have played themselves out of it as the 2 front runners. Breece Hall's not having a great season. Really, Iowa doesn't have that type of offensive player. Neither does Penn State. So I don't see anybody in the Big Ten playing at that level right now as an offensive player. If Virginia was any good, Brendan Armstrong would be in the Heisman conversation. He's leading the nation in yards passing per game, but he's not going to get consideration because of who he plays for and because they lose games. Who else is out there? Let's see. Georgia doesn't really have anybody because they split carries between 4 running backs and they don't have a wide receiver who dominates. Yeah, I think that Bijan Robinson has a good shot to continue to rack up the kind of numbers that people are looking for.
Yeah, I think I also think Sark is making tremendous strides in rebuilding Texas back to where it needs to be at the top of the AP top 25 every single year. You know, in the playoffs and then the championships, always contending for that top 10 slots. You know, it's still early, but I mean, we played terrible against TCU, and he's the first coach the last 2 who, since TCU joined the Big 12, beat him in their first season. And I didn't feel like we were going to lose the game at all. And I think Sark is the right coach to build Texas back up, even though he's had problems at USC. I think going to Saban and going to the NFL, he's learned from the best of how to make the team a winning program year in and year out. I don't know what you think about that so far with Sark's performance.
Well, I will say that even though I couldn't really lock on the game today, that I was in and out, and there were a few instances in which I focused in on a few situations, and I thought that they were more creative and that on offense, and that I think that it was pretty obvious that he had control of the offense and that they were more creative and were better capable of creating matchups in their favor than they were under Tom Herman. And I'll also say that beating TCU is a big deal because it shouldn't necessarily be a big deal, but they had lost 7 of 9 against TCU. So going to TCU and winning that game, and even though the score was relatively close, I thought they proved to be the better team throughout the game. So I thought that was fairly significant. Obviously, by going to Arkansas and being dominated along the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball shows that they've got much work to do. But maybe in that conference they don't. Maybe they'll be able to. Maybe it's going to be a mess of a race, and they'll be able to get into the Big 12 championship game.
Yeah, I think in the Arkansas game, I think Texas was still getting accustomed to the new system as well, and some of the linemen said with NIL deals with other organizations were saying that when it came down to it, they fell back onto what the previous staff had taught them on O-line when they fell back to that, they went back to what they were doing in the Herman staff, and they were failing over and over again, because Texas hasn't had a good O-line for the past decade, maybe even more. I think Sark's trying to coach that out of them, and I think it's hard to do with a new staff with players that you didn't recruit, and you have to replace somebody else's coaching essentially. But yeah, that's what I have to say about that. But thanks for the call.
Hey, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. All right. Before we take our next call, I would like to address some of these Super Chat contributions. They're always appreciated. Want everyone to know that anyway, if you enjoy the content here, whether it's the videos that I post on a daily basis, the conversations we have with the number of contributors that we have, or just the analytics that I provide with my top 25 or my power rankings or conference breakdowns or whatever it is, whatever draws you to the channel or the call-in shows, the live streams with Nebraska, Florida State, Miami, etc. Whatever it is, we appreciate you being here. And in any way that you can get the word out there, we would appreciate it. So please like the video, share the videos out on social media, subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. Also, if you've got a favorite team, which everybody does, I believe, you're a college football fan, please subscribe to your team channel. And actually, if you want to help us build the entire network, check out a channel that's less than 1,000 subs and subscribe to that channel. And even if you want to unsubscribe after we get to 1,000 subs, please help us by subscribing to one of the channels or many of the channels that have less than 1,000 subs. Once we get well past 1,000, if you want to drop the subscription, that's great, but consider doing that. All right, we got Super Chat contribution coming in from Get Business Credit. Appreciate you being here. Hey, bud, new sub. I'm a Buckeye, but on another note, I am a fellow YouTuber, 16,000 subs. How do you do call-ins with viewers if you do not mind letting me know? So obviously that's not a topic for here and now. Just give me a shot at MarkRogersTV at Gmail, and we can talk about it then. Thank you for the contribution. Dan, ever going to give Cincinnati credit it deserves? When have I not given anybody credit that they deserve? This is what I'm not understanding. I don't understand the question. If we could go through all my videos, if we could go through all my call-in shows, I have always given Cincinnati credit when they have played well and beaten good teams. I have probably said 100 times, 150 times, 172 times, Dan, that Cincinnati outplayed Georgia. They lost that game. I could have just said they lost the game, they got beat, they weren't up to it. But I said 1,000,000 times that Cincinnati outplayed Georgia in the Peach Bowl last year. Was that giving them credit? I believe so. I watched the game. I thought Cincinnati outplayed Georgia. And I said that 1,000,000 times. After the game, during the offseason, I've said a number of times that their schedule in the American Conference is comparable to an ACC schedule. I don't know what else you want me to say. I don't know what else you want me to say. I picked them to beat Indiana. Was that giving them any kind of credit? I did pick them to lose to Notre Dame today. I was wrong. They outplayed Notre Dame. Yes. Ever going to give Cincinnati credit it deserves? I don't understand this statement. You would have to call me and tell me when I've not given them credit, because again, I go on and on about, I've said probably another 247 times that it's the best program in the group of five currently, and has been for about 3 years. I've ranked them in the top 10 in the country. What else do I need to say here? All right. Okay. Next up at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Matthew.
Hey, Matthew. What's going on?
Well, good day. Texas won and A&M lost. And my question to you is, you know a lot about college football. What is the biggest win Jimbo Fisher has had in the regular season at Texas A&M?
His biggest win. This is probably pretty sad, but his biggest effort, probably the most impressive game that they've played, was the game that they almost beat Clemson at home. What was that, 3 years ago, when Trevor Lawrence just got into the game and Kelly Bryant was still the quarterback? That would have been 2018, when they were a double-digit underdog and they lost 28-26. So that didn't answer your question, but that was the first game that came to mind as being a game in which they were supposed to be routed, and they took the eventual national champion to the wire on a 2-point conversion. Best win, it's probably been beating the likes of an Auburn. Probably let's see, they beat LSU in that crazy 74-72 win when LSU finished in the top 10. Joe Burrow's next to last year. I would say probably that game, or a game against Auburn when Auburn was a top, 20 or 25 team. Those are their best wins. Nothing special.
Okay. I would agree. And why would they give someone an extension when he's not going to leave? If he's failing at this place, let's just say he were to fail,
you've got
he
me.
has nowhere else to go. No one's going to hire him. And he's not going to the NFL. So why do these colleges continue to give extensions to coaches that are not going to leave?
It's insane. I don't know if you heard me. I said the same thing about 15 minutes ago, that, okay, you already dumped a Brinks truck. You already pulled it up to his driveway and dumped a ton of money on his head a few years earlier, and he is yet to deliver on the initial investment. So until he delivers on the initial investment of the whatever $90 million for 10 years, you got me. Where else is he going to go? I said the same thing about 15 minutes ago, and I've said it a number of times. I'm flabbergasted at the extension. I don't know. You typically give extensions to coaches who exceed expectations, or, like you just stated, are hot commodities to go somewhere else. But when they're earning more money than anybody in the sport, practically, I know he and Saban are wherever they are. It doesn't matter. He's 1 or 2. And no NFL team's going to hire him. Where's he going to go? I don't get it. You're blowing money. It's almost like the government. These universities are similar to the government, the federal government, where they waste money when they don't have, they spend money when it doesn't have to be spent. Yeah,
I agree. I mean, Texas did the same thing with Tom Herman after the Sugar Bowl win, and then we ended up having to pay even a bigger buyout because of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, people made the point, like, where's he going to go? He's at Texas. This is his dream job. Keep him until his last year of his contract, and if he's proven he's worth an extension, then sign him to an extension. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I'm about to produce a Jimbo Fisher is overrated video. Not because I don't think he's a good coach. I think he's a good coach. I don't think he's anything special. And I heard this today that with this loss to Mississippi State, that Jimbo Fisher actually has a worse record at this stage of his career at Texas A&M than Kevin Sumlin.
He does, because last week he was even. They had the exact same record.
And obviously, Sumlin went 11-2 the first year with Johnny Manziel, and Fisher went 8-5, and they were taking over a bit different situation. But I do think it's fair now that he's in his 4th season to make that comparison. It is 4 seasons.
Yeah, and you're paying that guy that much money. That's what it comes down to. I agree with you. I think he's a good coach, but if you're being paid like a top, basically like he is a top 3 to 5 head coach, you have to produce at least somewhere around those results. He's got nowhere close, really, other than last year, and last year was a weird year.
You know, it makes me think of what people asked me and what my response was when Mark Richt was let go at Georgia and Les Miles at LSU. And some people were a bit sensitive to that and said, aren't they doing a good job? And I said, well, it all depends on what you're being paid. I said, Mark Richt is doing a good job. His teams are finishing in the top 10 more times than not. And Les Miles, pretty much the same thing. Are they delivering to a certain extent? Yes, they're good coaches. They're running top level programs, but they're being paid so much money. They're being paid to contend for championships on a regular basis, and they're not delivering. So that comes with the expectation of, we're going to pay you $7 or $8 million a year. We're going to pay you top 5 money in the nation. You're going to have to produce results, and we're giving you every resource to add to your coaching staff, hire the best assistants, the best coordinators, to put those guys on the road and recruit. And we give you everything you need. It's at your fingertips to build a football power. And yes, the expectations are somewhat unreasonable because there's a bunch of coaches out there that are getting paid like that. And so somebody's got to lose the games. But that's kind of the trade-off. You trade the expectations for making that kind of money.
Yeah, 100%. And the thing is, I think this is only going to get worse, not just this year, but next year. The good part about it is their defense. Most of their defense is gone next year. Yeah. It's going to the NFL.
You're right.
And their best players on offense are all going to go to the NFL. So this could get even worse.
Yeah, they had, as you well know, 9 starters coming back on defense. They did lose Buddy Brown and Bobby Johnson on the defense, 2 really good players, but they brought back 9 players on defense. The offensive line, they lost 4, but I heard Jimbo Fisher say a number of times during the offseason, don't worry about the offensive line. Even though we lost 4 starters, we've got our best lineman back, Kenyon Green, that they had to move from guard to tackle. And that and I just heard him say this a couple of weeks ago, that the offensive line that they have right now is stronger and more athletic and more talented and has a higher ceiling. And, you know, it's unfortunate that he lost. It's unfortunate that he lost a quarterback. But his skill position players are supposed to be really good. Isaiah Spiller, I think, is one of the best running backs in the nation. I don't think that they're getting better either next year.
The thing is, he doesn't utilize his wide receivers. He has a lot of good wide receivers. I mean, one of the best ones they had in Wright transferred to Minnesota, and he played pretty well for them. So I don't really understand why he doesn't utilize them. Obviously, the quarterback is the problem. But Calzada and Haynes King were supposed to be even in training camp. That's what he said. And then he gave him the job, a week, 10 days before the season opener. So, I mean, if they were even, and Haynes King struggled versus Penn State, I don't see this getting any better unless they go with Connor Wegman next year, who's really good and really talented coming in.
Oh, it's a great point.
But then again, I don't think it really matters for the next couple of years, because if Alabama and Georgia continue what they're doing, I think they're their conference for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, I agree. And again, yep.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'll let you finish that point. I'll go with the question afterwards.
Well, I was just going to say, if you really review the situation for any of these elite coaches, especially in the SEC, when you're playing that kind of competition, that they're all being paid to contend for and win championships, but there's only so many championships that can be won and so many playoff spots. So somebody's not going to meet expectations, but that is the game that is being played, and that is the compensation that is being delivered to these coaches. And so that's the expectation. And so somebody's going to fail out there.
Yeah, not everyone can succeed. And another question I had was, in a perfect world, if Alabama and Georgia did not exist, who would be the 4 teams in the playoffs in your opinion right now, or who are the 4 best teams other than those 2?
Well, they're not playing like it, but Ohio State, the 4 best teams in the country, I believe, are Ohio State, Iowa, Penn State, and Cincinnati, and Oklahoma's not playing like it. So I will go with the 3 teams from the Big Ten. And am I missing anyone? And Cincinnati. And I know Oregon beat Ohio State. I know that they did.
Yeah.
Those aren't the teams I would select. Like, I would select Oregon over Ohio State because they won the head-to-head matchup. But if you're just talking about who, it's similar to 2 years ago when LSU, Clemson, Ohio State were the 3 best teams in 2019, and then Oklahoma earned the 4th spot. I clearly said on here, when people asked me, did Oklahoma earn that spot or should they be in the playoff? I said, well, there's a difference to me between earning the spot and being the 4th best team. I said, Oklahoma's not the 4th best team, but they earned the spot. They won the conference and they only had 1 loss. Alabama's the 4th best team. We just saw them play Joe Burrow and LSU to a 46-41 game, and they wouldn't get blown out by 7 touchdowns to Oklahoma, or like Oklahoma did. So they're the 4th best team. Even in a down year, I truly believed that Alabama was the 4th best team, that if we were just selecting based on the eye test, that they should have been in the playoff, but they didn't earn the spot. So it's something similar now to the question you just posed me.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I think 3 through, actually like 20, I think could all beat each other on any given weekend this season. Like,
Yeah.
I don't really see, like, you told me Iowa played Arkansas, even what we just saw with Arkansas getting blown out, and Arkansas beat them by a touchdown or 2. I wouldn't be surprised if Ole Miss, even after what I saw today, you told me they beat Iowa or
I agree.
or something like that. Like, it's just crazy.
Absolutely.
Other than the teams under Alabama and Georgia.
Absolutely. I totally agree. And I may be wrong because it may be changing and it's a fluid situation. We reevaluate by the week. But right now, yes, Georgia and Alabama are playing a different sport. And the only team that I think is in position to pull it together, I'm not saying that they're going to, but has the talent to challenge either one of those, if they pull it together and play to their max, would be Ohio State. I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's the probabilities are against it, but they're the only team that I think could stay on a field with either one of them. Again, they would have to improve immensely, but they've got the capability.
Yeah. And I don't disagree with that. And my last question is going to be, how good is this Georgia defense? This is the best defense I've ever seen in my life.
It's phenomenal.
How good is it, like, compared to, yeah, you're watching history of college
Oh,
football.
my word. Arkansas just played a team that started the conversation, of course, Texas A&M. And Texas A&M has been recruiting top 5 to 10 line play, linebackers. You know, the core of its team has been really highly recruited. Same thing with Texas.
Yeah.
And Arkansas whipped them. I posted a video after the game, and I stated it this way, that Georgia did to Arkansas what Arkansas did to Texas and Texas A&M times 10. Like, they wrecked almost every play. Like, Arkansas could not run the plays that they wanted to run. It was similar to the Clemson game. Clemson, like Georgia, they just caved in their offensive line routinely and just disrupted plays where they couldn't even get the play started. They're devastating. They're phenomenal. Who do I liken them to? Wow, of course, Miami had great defensive teams around the 2000s, 01, 02. And my goodness. You know, what Georgia did today was they took apart a team that had been functioning at a high level. Now, we've seen Clemson struggle after the Georgia game, but the Arkansas offense, I'm not going to say it's some kind of great offense. It's not. Their quarterback's a runner. He's more of an athlete that can throw than he's not exactly Peyton Manning dissecting defenses back there. But and I do think that I don't think that Georgia would beat Arkansas 37-0 every time they played. I think Arkansas was a deer in headlights and they got overwhelmed. And I think that was quite obvious. But there is no comparison between the two teams. We would have to go through defenses. They are the best. They are playing better defense than anybody that I've seen in the last 10 years.
I mean, they've scored. Their defense has scored more touchdowns than they've allowed.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. Too. I did not think of that. They only gave up the touchdowns to South Carolina. Is the only team that's reached the end zone on them. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, 2-1.
Yeah.
Special teams is tied with it because they got the block punt today.
When they showed it from the aerial cam, the one that sits over the field. Lorenzo Watts, he took the guard number 55 and he just bulldozed him, and he almost like stepped on his headgear, like going over him. He just knocked him flat, and then I don't blame the running back. I think it was Traylon Smith of Arkansas. I think he intentionally looked the other way and didn't want to get in his way. Because he was the back. He was the back protecting the quarterback, but I think he just wanted no part of him. And Watts just killed KJ Jefferson. It's something else. It's going to be something else to see them play Alabama.
Yeah, and if the trend continues, we'll probably get to see them play twice.
And they're just getting healthy, too.
Yeah, they're not fully healthy. They get George Pickens back pretty soon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something else. We are seeing all that recruiting, all that work they've done in recruiting finally pay off. It's obviously paid off. They've been a 10 and 11 win team, but really come together and mature and play well together, even despite the injury issues. It's something else. Yeah. And they've got a ton of experience on their offensive line. I was trying to count the starts. They showed the starts. It was something in the 65 or 70 start range for their entire offensive line. It's probably more than that, actually. But, they've got a couple offensive linemen that already have 35 or 38 starts between them. So they've got an experienced offensive line, too. So, yeah, they didn't even need to pass today. They were that good against a team that I think is legitimately a top 15 to 20 team in the country. And
I would agree with
they
that.
They didn't need to pass.
Yeah, I think Ole Miss and Arkansas both top 25 teams. They just got
they are
by a lot better teams.
Yeah, like you say, 3 to 20 is a different level of football right now than 1 and 2.
And then I'll leave you with a quick, I want to see your insight on Oklahoma, Texas, but I'll hang up. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure. Thank you so much for the call. Oklahoma, Texas. Well, I think the vibe in the locker room has to be better on the Texas side because they're basically doing what they would have expected to do. Where Oklahoma, I think, came into this season maybe with a chip on its shoulder, thinking that they were automatically going to prance through the Big 12 and get to the championship game, and they've not been able to flip on the switch. I didn't see a whole lot of the Kansas State game today, but it was pretty obvious by the final score that they weren't able to put them away. They were up 27-10, so that was eerily similar to previous Kansas State games and similar to the Nebraska and Tulane games in which they had a big lead and could not hang on to it. Well, they did hang on to it, but weren't able to close the deal. Oklahoma has serious offensive line issues. Spencer Rattler's not a very confident player right now, although he played well statistically. Again, I didn't see much of the game. I saw like 5 plays. I was just watching other games, but I saw that Rattler went 22 for 25. I think he's a really good player. I think that he makes a couple key mistakes each game. I don't think that his receivers are playing well for him right now, based on what I saw against West Virginia in particular. I did see probably half of the Tulane game, most of the Nebraska game, and some of the West Virginia game. And Oklahoma's got a very sound defense, like a top 25 defense. And if Texas had a better offensive line, I'd feel more confident in Texas. But considering how good Oklahoma has been over the last 7 or 8 years, that they have been a top 5 program in the nation, and Texas has been the most underachieving program in the nation, Texas has played them to a 1-score game every year. And of course, beat them in 2018, beat them in 2015. And it hasn't been a 2-score game in like 7 or 8 years. So Texas routinely plays them well. And I think that they've got more mojo going into this game because they're not surprised by their season. They see themselves developing, getting better. They knew that they'd be in dogfights. They knew that they'd have close games. So they're accustomed to it. I think Oklahoma's playing a bit with a lack of confidence. And so it should be fascinating. If Texas's offensive line could play the game of its life, then I feel like Texas could beat Oklahoma. They need the offensive line. Either the offensive line needs to play its best game ever, or Sark needs to scheme to protect his offensive line next week and get the ball out of Casey Thompson's hand quickly. And of course, Bijan Robinson is playing out of his mind. And anytime you've got an X factor like him, a guy that can take over a game, and Rashawn Johnson is no joke either. He's a really good complimentary back for Texas. I'm impressed with him. Xavier Worthy has been a tremendous addition to this football team as well. Texas, Oklahoma is going to be fun to watch. Absolutely. I want to make sure I didn't miss anything here. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, who's on the line?
Hello, am I on?
You're on. Go to it.
Mark, how long are you going to have me on hold?
Whoa. Who is
Jesus,
this? Oh, my goodness.
A person of my status should go to the front of the line. Hello?
My word. If I only knew.
Mark, I don't like that shirt you're wearing. And to be perfectly honest, I've never liked you. All right.
Okay.
Now, can I talk a little bit of Notre Dame football?
Let me ask. Can I ask you a couple things before you keep going? First of all, I'd love to know who I'm talking to that doesn't like me.
It's Modine.
Oh, it's Mo. Okay. All right. So I know who I'm talking to now. You're very prominent there in the chat. You don't like my shirt. Do you know what shirt this is? Do you know what team this is?
Listen, anything with a C on it, I'm disgusted by today.
Oh, I got you. Well, this is not a Cincinnati shirt. Okay. Just
Listen,
so you know that.
Mark, anything with a C,
Okay.
I'm opposed to today.
You don't like
I don't want to
me.
see any C's anywhere.
All right.
All right. Any products I'm looking at right now, myself, anything with a C is going in the garbage. Now, listen, Mark. Notre Dame, first downs, 19. Cincinnati, 16. Rushing yards, just about even. Passing yards, just about even. Rushing yards per 3.0. All right. 2 turnovers for them, 3 for us. The game was pretty much even. No one was blowing anybody off the line. The problem is that all-timers having Kelly, right, is trying out 10 quarterbacks in the game instead of doing that in practice. He brings in Pine last week to play Wisconsin. The guy leads the team well. Bring him in as a starter. You got the starter on the bench. You're bringing the water boy in the game to play quarterback. You're bringing people out of the stands to play quarterback. Put the starter in the game. 0 points, Notre Dame, first half. Second half, 2 touchdowns by Pine, right? If you put him in the first half, maybe you get another 2. You win 28-24. Cincinnati stinks. Listen, do you think Georgia, or actually, do you think Notre Dame would beat Georgia the way they played today? Absolutely not. Cincinnati had the same stats. Now you want to put them in the playoffs to get blown out 46-0. At least put us in there, right? We always get blown out anyway, so we're used to it. Anyway, I just wanted to comment on Notre Dame and how my predictions are always right. I can't help it if Kelly doesn't put the starting quarterback in the game.
Wait a minute, Mo. If I'm not mistaken, you said all week that Notre Dame was going to roll Cincinnati, and then you just told me that your predictions are always your predictions are always right. Well, when you make your predictions, you've got to take the head coach into consideration as well, because he kind of calls the shots.
Listen, Mark, I can't help if these guys are going to do stupid things in the game. Listen, I think you're going to put. Listen, if I call the voice of college football, I expect to see Mark there. If all of a sudden you got Cheryl the Mod sitting in your chair, I'm like, what's going on? No one could have predicted that.
Well, I will say I'm going to take in the entire game. I'm going to take in the entire game. I've got it on DVR. I did watch basically the fourth quarter is what I've seen. And as soon as I flipped it on, watched a couple plays, and I saw a graphic that showed 3 quarterback stats, I thought, what are they doing? If somebody got hurt, that's one thing, but I saw 3 quarterback stats. I'm like, Brian Kelly's playing 3 quarterbacks?
Yeah, I agree with you, Mark. Anyway, with all that said, I wish Cincinnati a lot of luck moving forward. Notre Dame stinks. Let's hope we could pick it up one of these years and win a national championship. It's been a long time since '88. Georgia looks very strong. So does Alabama. But Georgia hasn't won anything since '80. I mean, even Notre Dame has won back in '88 before they won. So I don't know. Georgia, I think, is going to choke in the end.
Mo, maybe this will put me back in your good graces if I've ever been there. That I in the discussion about 1993, I have credited Notre Dame with a national championship in 1993. They should have been voted number 1 in '93. They had 1 loss. Of course, Florida State had 1 loss, and they won head-to-head. I don't know how you don't win the national championship when you finish with 1 loss and you beat the number 1 team head-to-head. Doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, we did. But it wasn't that the week after we lost to Boston College at home?
Well, you beat Florida State first, then you lost to BC, but we
lost to BC. We should have won that easily.
Sure.
Another crazy guy over there, Lou Holtz. But at least he got us 1, which is important.
Well, you've still got some interesting games against Virginia Tech, USC, North Carolina, all those teams. None of those teams are as good as you, but they're capable of winning. Capable.
Yeah, Mark, but listen, once you get that 1 loss, the season's over, especially for Notre Dame.
Yes.
Because a lot of times they really overhype them a little bit. So for Notre Dame, it's over. Forget it. They're not going to beat anybody anyway. I mean, they're definitely not going to be able to take on Alabama or Georgia. But it's fun when you keep going so you can talk more junk. Now I can't even talk junk because we got our butts kicked. It's over now.
Well, you know what?
The fun is all over, Mark.
Everybody else in the chat, their teams lose and they still talk junk. So nobody pays attention. So just keep going. Don't change.
I will, Mark. Oregon got robbed.
Yeah, I got to look into that. So I got to look. I got to look into this Oregon situation because I watched the last Stanford drive, but then I see all these comments that they got robbed. There was a targeting call, right? I didn't see it though. Is that what they're talking about?
Yeah, it was the last play of the game. 5 seconds.
Oh, we're talking about the pass interference call.
Yeah, that was nonsense. They've been playing handsy all game.
You're right.
There was even worse plays than that. A guy throws a flag on that play. That's nonsense.
You're right. The last 3 or 4 plays.
The receiver pushed off a little first.
Well, you know what?
I mean, the way I saw it.
What I was thinking was David Shaw is a smart guy, and I'm thinking they're running a fade to each corner. Can't they design a play, an actual play? Can't they design a good play?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Running fades to the end zone, that's like a 20% play, and that's what you're running over and over and over and over.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know what they were thinking, but still, they should have won the game. I mean, that flag, that was nonsense. The game was over. But what are you going to do? That's life. We move on. Mark, thanks for taking my call, sir.
Well, I appreciate it, Mo. We won't keep you waiting as long next time.
I was only teasing. Have a great night, everyone. Take care,
too.
Mark. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Our guy, Mo, I think that's the first time he's ever called. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's Zach from Columbus.
Hey,
well,
Zach.
I think Mo is, hey, man, I think Mo is a pseudo name for Danny DeVito. Your last caller sounded exactly like Danny DeVito. That was a good call, though. Well, let's see here. Well, what a difference a week makes with C.J. Stroud. Fantastic performance by C.J. Stroud. Granted, it was against Rutgers. I'm still going to stand by my prediction. I still think that when you look down the schedule, games you want to look at for Ohio State and circle it, of course, is the Penn State game, the Michigan State game, and the Michigan game. I still think that there's still a couple losses that this team's going to have to deal with throughout the season. But boy, oh boy, 5 touchdowns, over 300 yards passing. I think that him sitting that week was the best thing for him, obviously. Also, I'm not sure if you said a couple weeks ago, if there are other YouTubers that we should suggest that you might be interested in bringing in or doing segments with. But there's a couple that I've learned about recently. One is Big Ten Ted. Are you familiar with him?
Well, what's their name again?
His name is Big Ten Ted.
Nope, don't know who that is.
Okay, he's good.
Okay.
He's good. He's really good. I guess he has like a degree in broadcasting and fantastic. Someone, I'm not sure if you know, someone you might be interested in bringing on.
I've got a degree in broadcasting too, so.
Well, I can tell. I can tell. We can tell. Then another one, and this is a more controversial one, but I still think it'd be good. He's really good. Is Menace to Sports. It's Zach Smith. It's the former wide receiver coach for the Ohio State Buckeyes. He has a really good show.
I know who you're talking about, obviously. Sports. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
We'll try to track him down as well.
It might be a little controversial. I don't know with some Buckeye fans.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I'm an Urban Meyer fan, and if you go and watch what he has to say about everything, it's him and Urban Meyer still have a good relationship from what I understand. So I don't think it's as big of a deal as some might make it out to be. But yeah, I don't know. Outside that, I mean, I don't have much to say. I'm still going to stand by some of the predictions that I've made. I still think Ohio State, despite this performance against Rutgers, I still think Ohio State's going to have 2 to 3 losses this season. I still think Michigan will take Ohio State. Of course, I think that it's going to be a lot closer. If they continue, the thing is, each game is a separate entity, and you got to look at them all individually, and you never know. They're calling this year the Renaissance year, right? It's a Renaissance year of football. I'd be curious to hear I know it's hard to say, but look in your crystal ball and you let us know if you think this kind of Renaissance season is going to persist into the coming seasons. I'll hang up though and let you answer that. But outside that, that's all I have. Mark, you have a great show. You keep up the great work, and I will talk to you later.
Thank you so much, Zach. Appreciate that. I think that in any walk of life, especially in competitive sports, because you have somebody immediately pushing against your success. So, for example, in any other walk of life, practically, we could be successful just based on our own effort. Whether we were running an insurance company or an ad agency, we would have competition out there, but basically they would not be in the office trying to stop us from working. In competitive athletics, two teams hit the field every game and only one can walk off the field of success. So there is a far greater failure rate in competitive athletics. Therefore, what Clemson, Ohio State, and especially Alabama, of course, is the gold standard, have been able to achieve over the past 7 or 8 years in winning 90+% of their games and basically dominating the college football playoff is very difficult to maintain because there are dozens and dozens of other programs that have, if not equal to, similar recruiting footprints that are just as beneficial to them, resources, facilities, and so forth. And therefore, it's difficult to maintain that type of consistent excellence. So I think that this was inevitable. Now, what Nick Saban's able to do at Alabama is just continues to defy logic because, again, he's competing against top-level people and he is crushing them. So depending on your vantage point of college football, depending on how old you are, this is either completely uncommon to you or this is just a revisal of, let's say, the 1980s. If you would grab a top 15 throughout the 1990s and look at the preseason and postseason lists of the top 15 in the nation throughout the 80s and especially in the 80s, in the 90s, Miami through the first half of the decade, Nebraska, Florida State, those three schools were very dominant in the 90s. But throughout the 80s, you could pick up a top 15 one year and you could see Ohio State, Alabama, Tennessee, LSU, Colorado, Georgia Tech, USC, UCLA. You saw all sorts of teams. And then the next year you could see them disappear and be in the lower half of the top 25. There were new teams every year competing for national championships. Sure, there were teams that were better than others, more consistently better, but it was a free-for-all. You could take half the Big Ten, and over the course of the decade of the 80s, half the Big Ten won the Big Ten. Not like the last 10 years when Ohio State's basically won the Big Ten, and when they didn't, it took a fluke for them not to win the Big Ten. Oklahoma's won the Big 12, and when they didn't, like 2014, it was an off year. During the course of the 1980s in the Big Ten, Ohio State won the Big Ten a bunch of times. Michigan won it. Michigan State won it. Illinois won it. Iowa won it. Am I missing anyone? Indiana won it. At least tied for it in 1987. So hopefully we're getting back to that stage because I thought that was more fun and more interesting. I don't think that we're going to entirely get back to that point, but I think it's going to be more like that, where it's going to be more unpredictable than what it's been over the past 7 or 8 years, which is really just basically if you take Alabama, Clemson, and Ohio State, and to a lesser degree, Oklahoma and Georgia out of the mix the past 5 to 6 to 7 years, the rest has been pretty unpredictable. They've all mixed up. Penn State's been good. Notre Dame's been good. Michigan's been good. LSU's been good. You know, there's always going to be tiers to it, but those teams have beaten each other. So I think they're just Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma are being pulled down a bit to kind of join the mix of the other teams. So it's really not that much different, but it appears because those are the important teams and games that are being played that people pay attention to. So now that it becomes this unpredictable because we don't have like 3 to 5 foundational teams to say these teams just don't lose and they're marching toward a playoff run. So 2 or 3 of those teams are being pulled down into the minutia with the rest of them to beat each other. And it's only Alabama and Georgia. I don't know if I'm making sense with this rant, that it appears to be more chaotic than it is. It's always been chaotic between 5 and 50. Now it's between like 3 and like 2 or 3 more are into the mix of beatable teams. And so it seems more chaotic because we're only trying to fill 4 spots. So instead of the entire playoff field being predictable, like 4 of these 5 are going to make it, now it's only 2 of the 5 are going to make it for sure. Therefore, it seems unpredictable all of a sudden. All right, let me pick up these super chats, then I'll take the next call on the line. I don't like to miss these super chats because I appreciate them so much, and I hope that you understand that any way that you contribute, if you hit the like button, let people know that we're here talking college football all the time, whatever it is, we appreciate it. And please subscribe. Get Business Credit. You're back at it here. Appreciate the contribution, man. Still learning, but only really been watching college football for 2 years. All teams, Ohio State games for many years. More of a hockey player. Now I'm really into college football with Ohio State losing. Do you think if Ohio State wins all their games going forward, do they have a chance in the college football playoff, or is it gone? Well, if they win the rest of their games, they will be the Big Ten champions with 1 loss. And I think the only issue Ohio State would have would be in a head-to-head comparison with Oregon. Even though Oregon lost a pretty damaging game today because Stanford's not a good team. They're a decent team. I expect them to finish in the top 40 or 50 in the nation and go whatever, 5-7, 6-6, something in that range, maybe 7-5. Which just reminds me, having selected Stanford over 3.5 wins, good selection, Mark, because their schedule's tough. Anyway, that if the College Football Playoff Selection Committee has to make that head-to-head comparison between Ohio State and Oregon, if it continues to play out, let's say they both run the table, they're conference champions at 12-1, that the committee, and it would be understandable and it would be backed up and confirmed and applauded by me, would select the team that won the game head-to-head. So Ohio State has that issue. They need Oregon out of the way. But otherwise, if they win the rest of their games, they're in the playoff. They're in the playoff. The only thing that could possibly happen to keep Ohio State out of the playoff in that instance, or any Big Ten champion with 1 loss, is if Wake Forest goes undefeated and Alabama and Georgia make it and Cincinnati goes undefeated, and those would be your 4 teams, and they leave out the Big Ten champion with 1 loss. That is the only way the Big Ten champion with 1 loss is going to be left out. And again, somebody from the Big 12 can still go undefeated. It just wouldn't be the team that we would expect. Oklahoma's looked bad. Sure, they could right the ship and go undefeated. All right, back to the phone lines here. Welcome into the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Sean.
Hey, Sean. What's going on?
Hey, what? Some days the sun just shines a little brighter. The grass just smells a little greener. That doesn't make any sense at all, but you understand where I'm going with this.
You're feeling good about today.
Huge. Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Lifelong Cincinnati Bearcats fan. Call my 88-year-old grandfather, who's not doing the best right now after the game, and he confirmed he was played at the University of Cincinnati under Sid Gilman, and confirmed that this is without question the biggest win in the history of the program today. I mean, and kind of choked me up listening to him because, you know, he followed them through the 60s, 70s, 80s, a lot of very, very lean years. Well, I mean, being pretty much irrelevant until, I don't know, like the late 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
Until Antonio and Kelly. I mean, this, and I don't know, it's just a remarkable moment for me. One of my favorites. I'm 33 years old. One of the best moments I've ever had watching college football was today. So
cool.
And I mean, it's kind of, the game didn't really surprise me like virtually at all. It kind of went how I expected it to, but I thought Cincinnati was the better team going into the day. I knew it was probably going to be hard to win in South Bend. Did you see a lot of the shots of the stands during the game? There was a lot of red, a whole lot of red in that stadium.
I didn't necessarily notice that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it was just a few shots that were in certain sections that that distorted it for me, but it's just when get your thought, like going forward, is this where do you think Cincinnati actually stands on the totem pole right now? Like, is this legitimately a top 4 team? And if they win out with this resume, this will clearly be their number 1 win. And Notre Dame's got a really soft schedule the rest of the way, so they'll probably, I'm guessing they'll lose one more game. That team might compare at, like, I don't think they're like a great team. I think they're better than every other team on their schedule, but I kind of don't think they're good enough to win every single one of those games.
Yes, I agree with your assessment of Notre Dame. They are better than every other team on their schedule, but that doesn't mean that they're not capable of losing some of those games. They almost lost to Toledo. Notre Dame or Purdue was within 1 score with about 5 minutes left in the game. So they've got a lot of games where they could easily lose. Virginia Tech, North Carolina, USC, but they're better than those teams. So the odds say that they're going to trip up to somebody and probably finish 10-2. That's what's most likely to happen.
Yeah, and the American seems quite a bit down this year. I don't really see. I mean, Cincinnati's. It would be a massive upset if they were to suffer a loss to anyone else in that league. It's kind of amazing. Week 5, they haven't played a single league game yet. It's all American teams, and I don't think any of them are any good. They'll probably be favored 20 by at least 24 or so the rest of the way. So if they put this resume together, like, I mean, I'm thinking like Alabama, Georgia, if they do what we're all expecting them to do and just sort of run the table and play each other, they've got 2 spots in it. And then if some team runs the Big Ten with 1 loss, I think they're in as well. Do you need to have, like, do you think any 1-loss Power 5 champion is automatically getting in ahead of Cincinnati?
Not automatically. I think it's likely. But I don't think it's as automatic as it's been in the past. Because UCF obviously twice has been undefeated, and Cincinnati last year, and they were passed over for 1-loss conference champions. But Cincinnati has done something that those teams did not do, and that's scheduled 2, at least on paper, to start the season, quality teams out of conference. Now, Indiana's already lost 3 games, so we'll see what happens with Indiana.
Yeah.
But Cincinnati at least went out there and scheduled 2 games and went on the road to take on Notre Dame and Indiana, and that wasn't done before. And we've got a situation in the ACC that, even though the committee would tell you that they don't look at name brand or reputation. That bias is implanted in their brains. And certainly if Clemson was 5-0 right now and not Wake Forest, that would be a completely different dynamic than Wake Forest being undefeated at 5-0. But if Wake Forest goes through the ACC and finishes undefeated, and comparing their resume to Cincinnati is going to be difficult for the committee. That's a difficult comparison to make.
Well, I mean, the ACC is a lot of jokes are made about the ACC, but they're still considerably strong. It's still considerably stronger this season than the American, I would think.
Well, because the Americans come back. If this was the American of 2 years ago, that would be an interesting conversation. But yes, the American right now, it would help Cincinnati if SMU would stay undefeated, because they've got to win against TCU. And they won on a Hail Mary a couple weeks ago, but they did win the game. And that would just help them for if somebody else became a big game for them in the American.
Yeah, that seems unlikely. One of the interesting teams in that league that I can't figure out at all is Tulsa. They had real competitive games with two really good teams, Oklahoma State and Ohio State. Then they lost but they began the season losing to a not even all that great FCS team. Like, they didn't lose to North Dakota State. They lost to UC Davis.
Yes.
He was ranked like 23rd in the FCS. And last night got absolutely, ramrodded by Houston at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I just can't figure that team out at all. Obviously, that's not going to be any sort of quality win whenever they get to them anyway. But they just got kind of one of the more interesting resumes of any team I've seen this season. But yeah, I was wondering. I'm 33 years old. This is the first time I've ever seen Notre Dame and Cincinnati play each other. First time I can ever remember it.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems kind of odd to me because Notre Dame's recruited the Cincinnati area very aggressively. I mean, they've gotten tons and tons of players out of there for years and years, and all the Saint X and Molders and Colerains and stuff like that. It's kind of odd. Did you remember them playing back in the 80s, back when they were both independents and stuff? Do you?
I'm really good, typically, not as good as I used to be, but with remembering schedules and games and scores, I don't remember Cincinnati and Notre Dame playing. I'll look it up right now. I don't remember them playing games against each other. Let's see here.
Yeah. Just thought.
Yeah, those games do not come to mind at all. Let's see. Notre Dame and Cincinnati, they have played. They played once in 1900.
What?
1900. That's the only time they've ever played.
Okay, so they
go.
were so these two.
There's a good reason I don't remember them playing.
Yeah. It probably just wasn't on television then, right? You're probably you're probably checking out Grant, waiting for Grantland Rice's
that's it.
Right up on the game. No, so that's so bizarre to me. I mean, these two schools that are like 4 hours apart from each other. They were both independents for a really long time. Cincinnati was in a conference for like 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
Cincinnati played like Penn State almost every year for a long time. And and Notre Dame recruits the hell out of the Cincinnati area. It doesn't make any sense to me that they wouldn't have played semi-regularly, but that's crazy. It's crazy to I don't know. Just a wonderful, wonderful day, and I'm just really happy for my grandfather. This might be the last Cincinnati season he gets to see, and just happy, just very happy. It's a true, looks like it's going to be a truly special one. So.
Yeah, well, that's nice.
Thank you very much, Mark.
That is nice to hear, and I'm glad that you called in, and congratulations on the big win. And there should be a lot of drama throughout this rest of the season to see what happens with the Bearcats. So thanks for calling.
Absolutely. Go Kitties.
Have a good night.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Before we take these other calls, the Wake Forest situation, I do not believe that Wake Forest has what it takes to go undefeated, even against their marginal schedule. But for the next 3 weeks, they may keep this streak alive because they've got Syracuse, Army. Both of those games are on the road, but Syracuse, Army, and Duke the next 3 weeks. So Wake could be 8-0. Then they've got North Carolina on the road, NC State, Clemson, BC. They've got 4 difficult games. Can they win those games? Yes. But consecutively against those 4 teams, the probabilities are minuscule. So my hope is that Wake Forest can go undefeated, but the likelihood is practically zip. Oh, somebody had asked, let me answer this question in the Super Chat contribution about Iowa and Penn State, the keys to the game. I apologize that I lost track of the Super Chat, but it came in. I had it posted on the screen, and I can no longer go back and get it. But I do remember the question. Basically, the looks like I got to block somebody. Yeah. So Iowa, Penn State, keys to the game. Penn State's got a quarterback in Sean Clifford, who I believe has improved considerably. He's not a great quarterback, but he's a top 20 or 25 quarterback in the country now. He's considerably better than what he's been in the past. And maybe he'll prove to be better than that. Spencer Petras continues to miss the market on too many throws. So I'm more trusting of Penn State's quarterback situation than Iowa's, although Sean Clifford is not proven to be capable on the road. He has a bad history of big games on the road. Where I believe that Penn State is susceptible is the offensive line versus Iowa's defensive front. Again, both teams have exceptional secondary play. Iowa more from a ball hawking standpoint, getting turnovers, interceptions. Penn State more from the standpoint of just breaking up passes, covering their men, tackling in space, bringing safeties on blitzes. This guy Brisker is a tremendous player from the safety position for Penn State. I think this is a very even game. I think Penn State's a bit more talented. They have Jahan Dotson, who is a bigger playmaker, bigger game changer on the perimeter than what Iowa has. I think that if they were playing at Penn State, I would give Penn State a pretty sizable advantage, a decided advantage, maybe like a 60-40 advantage. But now that they're playing at Kinnick Stadium, I think it's a flip of the coin. And that crowd and that setting can be overwhelming. And there are 2 examples recently of Penn State going to Iowa in which the season played out and Penn State proved to have a better team. Again, decidedly better, not substantially, but decidedly better, no doubt better than Iowa. But because they had to go to Iowa and play in that setting, in that environment, both of those games went right down to the wire. And I'll be somewhat surprised if this one doesn't as well. So hopefully that answered your question. Let's head back to the phone lines here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark.
George.
Yeah.
How you feeling?
Deep into this movie. I'm feeling great. I'm watching a movie called Jackie Brown. Have you seen that? Got all those famous actors in it.
Is it the same Jackie Brown that John Mellencamp talks about in his song Jackie Brown?
I don't know, but it's an old movie from like when I was a kid. It's in color, but other than that, it's pretty ancient. Anyway, I was just trying to distract myself from football for a minute. I know you have clout with USC. I need you to talk to them and tell them that Todd Grantham and Dan Mullen are available. They could steal them from us right now. Just take them.
Get rid of both of them.
Get them out of here.
Yeah.
We'll go. We're going to go for Hugh Freeze or that Luke Fickell guy, unless we can get Spurrier or Urban Meyer back. We'll take them first.
I don't think that Spurrier has quite the drive or energy to take on a football program at this point. I think golf is probably on his mind most of the time.
I agree. My brother goes to his restaurant and eats sometimes in Gainesville. I'm in Oregon. He describes to me exactly where he built it. He's like, George, they built this whole new overpass and there's this whole new subdivision and Spurrier's got his restaurant back there and it's right in the main part of town. It's good stuff. If you ever get to Gainesville, you should go by there.
I have never been to Gainesville.
Okay, other than throwing my whole coaching staff under the bus tonight, what else is there to talk about?
Okay. You've liked Dan Mullen before, right? You were always
I've never said a bad word about the man.
Okay. That's what I thought.
It's like one of Jesus's disciples just checked out, you know? Yeah. I don't understand thing. I'm stupid. I don't know football that good. I'm not a $1 billion a year coach. Maybe I just don't understand. I would like to say congratulations to Florida State. My God. Even though they're like my arch rival, my nemesis, I'm still happy for them. I'm gleaning some happiness. Kentucky, congratulations. I can feel a little bit of your happiness too, you know. I didn't know the booth could initiate calls like 8 times a game and just steal the game away. When the referees forgot to call the foul, so the booth does it for you now. What do they have, like an earpiece into Vegas or something? And what's going on, man? The booth said there was a targeting call and your best player's out of the game on a third play of the game. Come on. Who did they do that to?
Was it targeting,
Kentucky.
though?
Who was it?
Was it a fair call?
No, it wasn't targeting.
Okay.
Nobody saw it.
Okay.
Mathematically speaking, by the numbers, is Florida eliminated from the playoffs, or is there a scenario where Kentucky loses a couple games, we beat Georgia, and we still get to play Alabama? Is there any mathematical probability there at all?
Sure.
How's that work?
Well, Kentucky still has to play Georgia. There's 1 loss. They still have to play LSU. There's 2 losses.
Okay.
So they got to lose again, right? 3?
So that's good. That takes care of Kentucky. What? We just got to beat Georgia now?
Well, no, it doesn't take care of Kentucky because you've lost twice. You got to lose. They got to lose 3 times.
Wait, no. We only lost once to an East opponent.
That doesn't matter. It only matters the conference.
Yeah, it does
record.
matter. If we beat Georgia, we win the East. Listen, in the Southeastern Conference, it does matter. They separate those losses. It's between the people in the East for the East and the West for the West. The cross-conference losses don't count against you head-to-head.
George.
I'm pretty
you
sure.
Need Kentucky
I'm
to
wrong.
lose 3 games. You've lost 2 games in the conference. If you finish at 6-2 in the conference and Kentucky is 6-2 in the conference, regardless of who they lost to or did not lose to, they will have the head-to-head tiebreaker over you to go to the SEC.
Okay, so that means
game.
Okay, you just answered my question. So mathematically speaking, this is going to be hard. 3 games. So we got Georgia, LSU, and who else?
Well, let's look at their schedule. They play Mississippi State. They could lose to Mississippi State. Maybe.
Yeah, it's possible.
Vandy? How about Vandy?
Crazy.
Let's rest our hopes on Vandy. Vandy beats Kentucky. How about that?
No, I think it's going to come down to Mike Leach. He's my only hope.
Yeah.
I want to make jokes about Georgia. I just don't know what to say right now.
Yeah,
I don't even feel like making any Stetson Bennett jokes right now.
I don't think it's possible to make fun of Georgia right now. I don't even think there's any way to construe it in any possible way.
Florida had 170 more offensive yards than Kentucky. Dan Mullen's never had a team in his life that was so penalized in a game as it was today. We all saw enough of the game to know there was never more than one or two plays where they didn't just blow a whistle. And, I'm just saying, I don't know. I'd like it better if it was like a clean game. They did it on all the games today. It wasn't just that game. It was all the games. Oh, well, other than that, what the heck? If you won your parlay, it's all okay. Right?
Parlay. I tell people not to play parlays. Don't play. Nobody out there should be playing a parlay. You're wasting money. You are throwing your money down the toilet.
I said it facetiously. I said, if you won your parlay today, everything's okay. Yeah, that's a joke. You get it? It's like, nobody wins no parlay. That's like playing not highlight, but Keno. It's like playing Keno. Just pick 12 numbers out of these 84 numbers and see how it works. But yeah. All right.
All right, George. Let me move through these calls.
Callers?
Oh, I've got more callers. I do, believe it or not. Somebody wants to talk to me.
All right.
It's hard to believe.
All right. They couldn't hear me crying. I covered that up well.
All right. Say a prayer tonight for Dan Mullen and Todd Grantham.
Yeah, they're out of here. We're done with them.
Okay. All right, George. Be good. It's only football.
Tomorrow. All right.
Have a good night. All right. Real quick, Jay Bird, how Mark going to drop Oregon out of the top 10 but rank Ohio State? You got to wait and see the top 25. That actually makes sense, because I guarantee only one thing. Only one thing can I guarantee. It will make sense. Here we go. Welcome to the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Nick. I called earlier, but I had a few more questions for you I forgot to ask. Is that okay?
Technically, no, but we'll allow it this time. I try to stay to the one call per night. What you got, Nick?
Oh, okay, cool. I'll blaze through this. What are your current top 4 teams right now if you had to pick and choose for the college football playoff, including your opinion, not just on the field results?
Okay. Are you asking me who the 4 best? See, I got to distinguish this, because tomorrow I'm going to release my top 25, but that's based strictly on a resume. That's all it's based on. Resume.
If Mark Rogers was the college football playoff committee and you had to pick today, in your opinion, who you would put in, who would you put in?
Who has earned it?
No. Who
are the 4 best teams? Those are 2 different things. The 4 best teams and who earned it.
Yeah, 4 best teams in your opinion.
4 best teams in the country are Alabama, Georgia, Penn State, and Iowa.
Okay. Next, if Oregon and Ohio State both win out, including conference championships, which one goes to the college football playoff?
Oregon.
If there's only one spot left. Okay. Third, Cincinnati winning out against a one-loss Power 5 conference champion. Do you think they get in?
No.
And I would. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you want me to elaborate? No, I don't. I don't think that they'll get in.
Okay, so and that's assuming Alabama and Georgia are in.
I don't think that has anything to do with it, because I don't think that one-loss champion is going to be the one-loss champion. If the one-loss champions from the SEC, they're definitely not going to get in. Pardon me?
Even with the win over Notre Dame, you still think if they go undefeated, you would take the one-loss?
Are you talking about what I would do or what I think the committee's going to do? I think the committee is going to take a one-loss Power 5 champion, as they have done time and time again over Cincinnati, because their win over Indiana's not going to amount to much, and the win over Notre Dame, we'll have to wait and see what it's going to be. Maybe Notre Dame goes 11-1 and it becomes something more legitimate. I think that somebody separating themselves in the American Conference would help as well, whether that's Houston or most likely SMU's undefeated right now. They could use SMU, who's got a decent win over TCU, to go 11-1 and lose to Cincinnati. That would help.
Okay.
There's a lot that goes into these questions, you know. It's
I just wanted to quick fire get your immediate reaction. And one last comical comment, hopefully I'll get from you, just so we know you better in the chat. If you do have a more embarrassing moment than when you said a couple at your church asked you if you were your daughter's husband, what is that moment?
Oh boy. Do you know what? Something automatic.
I'll let you ponder.
Okay. I don't need to ponder it, and I probably shouldn't tell anybody this, but you asked me for an embarrassing moment. I'll give it to you. Thanks for the call.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, Nick. All right. So the chat wants to know me better. All right. This is an embarrassing moment right here. So some of you know that I was a broadcaster for about 9 to 10 years. I went to school for broadcasting, and then I was at Penn State University. I was a broadcast journalism major, and then I was a news anchor and reporter, and then I was a sports director at a CBS station after that. There was one particular night, and I didn't even have to think about this. As soon as he said the term embarrassing, I cannot think of a more embarrassing moment in my life, because I said it in front of probably about, considering our ratings, the figure like 175 to 200,000 people come to mind. So I probably said this in front of about 200,000 people. So at the end of my sportscaster, at the end of the sportscast, this has been so long ago, I don't remember the circumstance or the player or whatever it was, but I was giving a injury update on a particular player, and I said that they had a ruptured disc, except I did not say disc. Fill in the blank. There you go. Welcome to the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is GA.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Ain't much. I just had like 1 or 2 quick questions for you. But I gotta say, I've been listening on the phone, and your other guests have been very funny. But how do you feel about?
You just heard my story. Is that what you're talking about, right, DA?
No.
Oh, okay.
No,
I didn't know what you were responding to there.
Yeah, nah. I mean, the story is funny. I mean, stuff happens to everybody.
Oh yeah.
Flip of the tongue, you know.
It does.
But how do you feel about Like, what do you think is going to happen when the AP comes out? Like the 1 to 2 rank.
What's going to happen when what comes out? I'm sorry.
The AP ranking.
Oh, the AP rankings. Well, if you've listened to me at all, you know how much I trust and believe in the AP rankings. So I really don't put a lot of stock in the AP rankings. I don't even know what they are right now. Let me look at them right now.
I don't think they changed.
I haven't looked at them in weeks. So let me see what they were going into this week. So this is what it's going to be. So I'm looking at them right now. They're going to drop Oregon out of sight. So it's going to be Alabama 1, Georgia 2. They're going to stay with Alabama, Georgia 1 and 2. Obviously, Georgia, having just defeated Arkansas in just devastating fashion, might have vaulted Georgia to 1 if Alabama would have played a nobody. But Alabama, of course, played Ole Miss. Penn State looked impressive. So did Iowa. So they're going to just slot into the 3 and 4 slots. And then Oklahoma looked decent enough that maybe Cincinnati might leap Oklahoma. I can see them doing that since Cincinnati won at Notre Dame versus Oklahoma struggling again. So Cincinnati might pop up to the 5 spot. And then really nobody else is that important right now.
Right. Yeah. So, all right, because Oregon lost, and so they're definitely gonna drop. It is that looking at commentary and stuff like that, I've noticed, and it was just the dominance that Georgia showed during that game, and Alabama gave up 21 points.
Well, they really gave up nothing when it mattered. They were up 28-0 at halftime. So I look at those 21 points to be different than if they would have given up 21 points in the first half and it was 21 all at halftime, and then they poured it on and won 42-21.
Right.
I look at it.
Yeah, I'm saying because I've heard a lot of people saying that Georgia might be ranked number 1. And I was just trying to get your opinion about it.
Well, you got to consider this though too, DA, is that Alabama had 58 first place votes and Georgia only had 4, so it wasn't even close going into this week. So I doubt if that many voters are going to flip their votes, especially when Alabama beat that good of a team and led them by 4 touchdowns at halftime.
Unfortunately, I know too much about that. We don't never get the recognition.
You're a Georgia
Alabama
fan.
Gets all of it. I'm born and raised in Georgia.
Okay. You understand you really have nothing to worry about. Well, why are you concerned with the AP rankings?
No, I was just curious.
I wouldn't be concerned with it.
And
You got a great team.
I was looking at the video.
You got a great team.
I was looking at your live stream,
Yep.
and I was like, let me just ask him, what he thinks, because I know you're a sports analyst, and just want to know.
Yeah, I think by far those are the 2 best teams in the country right now, no doubt. So you can't go wrong either way, ranking either one of them. They've both been dominant. If you had to ask me, I would say that Georgia's been more dominant. And they've played a slightly tougher schedule. Well, they've played a significantly tougher schedule because Clemson, despite their problems, is a they've played Arkansas, who I still believe is a legitimate top 15 team in the country, and Clemson, despite their problems, is a top 15 to 20 team in the country. And UAB is a pretty solid group of 5 team, and South Carolina is obviously one of the worst teams in the SEC, but still probably a top 50 team in the country. and Miami's nothing close to what they were supposed to be. And this Ole Miss team is by far the best team Alabama's played.
Right. All right. So I know we went on a rant, but the second thing was like, how do you fare against our upcoming? So like Auburn, Florida, and what else we got?
Kentucky.
One of like how do you favor against those things?
How do I think Georgia's going to do against those three?
Yeah.
Well, I think that Georgia's significantly better than any one of those three teams. All three of those teams are in the Arkansas category. Now, do I expect Georgia to go out there and beat all three of those teams 37-0? No. I think Arkansas had a bad game plan, and they were like a deer in headlights, and they were ill prepared and had not seen that kind of environment. So I think that had something to do with Arkansas playing so poorly. I think that Auburn's probably not, up until tonight. They beat LSU on the road tonight, so good for them. That all three of those teams are roughly in the same category. They're three of the top 20, 25 teams in the country. They're all really good teams, especially Florida. Obviously lost to Kentucky, but that was a road game. And anything can happen in a one-game scenario, but Georgia's much better than all three of those teams. They're at least a couple touchdowns better than all of them. But if they if they show up and play their C game or play a C- game, and one of those teams shows up with an A game, then it's possible. Alabama just went to Florida 2 weeks ago and almost lost.
Yeah, only reason I'm asking is because being a native of Georgia, you think about the national championship against Alabama that we should have won.
Mm-hmm.
You think about the Atlanta Falcons against the New England Patriots that we should have won.
Sure.
I'm just like, I don't want no slip up.
And you should have beat them in the SEC championship game the next year too.
Yeah, I was like, we need to go undefeated. And then, because, the cocktail party it's supposed to be a neutral site, but it's in Florida. So, I'm just, I just had these curious questions. And I don't want to hold the time.
No, I appreciate the call. You've got to be happy with your team. They're on a roll. They're getting healthier, getting some bodies back here soon. And so they should just keep improving.
Yeah, we just got Washington back. He ain't played that much.
Yeah, Darnell Washington. Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, all right, man. I'm going to let you get back to your show, and I'm going to continue watching your show. Because I'm looking at it right now on YouTube.
I appreciate it, man. You have a good night.
All right, you take it easy.
Have a good one.
Yeah, you too, man.
All right. You guys, if I don't tell you this enough, you don't know. I appreciate the calls. I appreciate the support. I can't believe that I'm sitting here and all of you have interest in what I have to say about college football. So I do appreciate that. Believe me. Let's move on to the next call. And I'm appreciative that Arizona State's backing up my prediction tonight. I'm glad of that too. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, man, you working overtime tonight?
I guess so. This is Hurricane Logan?
Yeah.
All right. What's going on? Oh, I took a chance. I took a shot.
No, Mark, it's Lamb Found. I've got a song, a fight song, college football fight song. Can I go for it? I've been prepping and practicing, getting ready to sing this for you.
Is it clean?
Come on, man. It's a fight. It's a Notre Dame fight song. I'll even give you the backstory afterwards.
All right, give it to me. Let's go. Strike up the band.
Cheer, cheer, cheer for old Notre Dame. Wake up the echoes cheering her name. Send the volley cheer on high. Shake down the thunder from the thunder sky. Although the odds be great or small, oh, Notre Dame will win overall. While her loyal sons are marching onward to victory. Onward to victory for Notre Dame.
Beautiful.
What do you think, man? That was for you.
That was beautiful. Really? Spirited. I'll
never forget it. So I went with family friends with their children. Rudy had just coming out, which you still haven't seen yet, and I'm going to encourage you until the day you die for you to watch that film.
Okay.
Here I am, a little kid, and I see mighty Notre Dame on the big screen, and this talentless little guy from, blue-collar family who has a dream to play for Notre Dame, and he fulfills it. But the things that he had to go through to get there, that's the story. And it was a true story. It's a beautiful film. I encourage you to watch it if you haven't yet.
I have never seen the movie in my life.
You have got to watch Rudy. It's one of my favorite films, if not my favorite film.
I've seen Knute Rockne, All-American. There's a Notre Dame movie. I've seen that.
Okay.
I think I have. Yeah.
I would say it's in easily. Sorry. I never heard of that one you're talking about. I would
Knute Rockne, All-American? Look it up.
Hey, bro, listen, I was born in 1984.
Well, I wasn't born when it was out either. It was like a 1930. Let's see. I'll look it up. Knute Rockne.
Oh, black and white film. Okay.
Oh yeah, it's an old movie. Knute Rockne, All-American, 1940. I was just a lad. All right, Rudy, I got it. It's on my list. I'll get it in by the end of the century.
That's all I really had for you, man.
Nate says that the best football movie is We Are Marshall. I have seen that. That is an excellent movie. Well,
that came out, what, 15 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, something like that. Matthew McConaughey. Wasn't he in that? Somebody else said, watch Brian's Song. I've seen that movie as well. It's a football movie.
You feel, as a kid, honestly, it's when I fell in love with college football, probably. One of the times I fell in love with college football. You feel the tradition of Notre Dame in that film. I can't explain to you.
Do I really want to feel the tradition of Notre Dame, though? This is something that I've never felt before, and I really don't know that I want to ever have that feeling in my life.
What are you talking about? They've got great college football history and tradition.
I didn't say that they didn't.
Notre Dame, those gold helmets, the Fighting Irish, South Bend, Indiana.
I'm familiar.
What are you talking about? Doesn't get more Midwest than that, my friend.
Yes, I'm familiar with the helmets and the touchdown Jesus and the stadium and everything you just mentioned. Yes, I'm familiar. The Longest Yard. Yes, that's a good movie with Burt Reynolds. Remember the Titans? I've seen that movie as well. Varsity Blues. I've never seen that movie. People are naming their favorite sports movies now. The Blind Side. I've seen that movie. North Dallas 40. I've seen that movie. Waterboy. I've seen that movie. I've seen everything but Rudy. The Replacements, I don't believe I've seen. I am guessing that the people that are on hold right now are wanting to talk about college football since it is college football season, and we can talk about movies in the middle of May. So I appreciate the call. It was a tremendous
good idea.
For you to be singing the Notre Dame fight song on a day that Notre Dame lost its first game of the season is kind of interesting, but I appreciate your passion.
To the world. To the world.
Thank you so much.
Anyway, they probably have to take.
Call back anytime.
Right,
have a good one.
Thanks, bud.
You know, I recognized his voice, but he still didn't identify himself. I'm sorry if I don't recognize everybody's voices, but welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
What's up, Mark? What a great day in college football, ain't it?
A great day of college football, unless you are a BC fan.
Well, no, I'm not even talking about Clemson winning because they still look terrible on offense. The offensive line looked a lot better, but DJ missed a lot of touchdowns. I mean, a lot of and the receivers messed up a lot too. But you know, it'll get better as the year goes on. I was talking about Oregon and losing to Stanford.
Yeah.
I mean, Cincinnati proving they belong by beating Notre Dame. I mean, hey, East Carolina beat Tulane 3-2. I mean, it's just, you know, let me tell you about the parlay bet I made, right?
Okay. Did you win one?
I put $100 down.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I'm about to tell you why. So
I tell you all the time, don't bet parlays. You should have taken Arizona State in 3.5 points. They're up by 19 right now. I said Arizona State was going to take this. Go ahead.
But I lost so much during the day. It really didn't matter. But so pretty much, I was about to win $2,000. I put $100 down, and Wisconsin somehow scored at the end of the half. Because I needed for them to go under 21. So I think it was like 13-7 or something like
13-10.
And somehow Indiana 13-10. I was like, oh my God, they just scored. I ain't gonna win the parlay. I got everything else right with that one. I'm like, why they waiting now to score?
Why, DeAndre? Why? No parlays. I'm going to put that right next to what I always say about buys. No buys, no parlays. I would love for you.
Right.
You should have kept track a long time ago when you bet your first parlay. You should have kept track of your wins and losses in parlays. I guarantee it's awful. Not because you don't know what you're talking about, because it is for everybody.
You're right. I admit that. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's a waste of money. I was just doing something for fun, and I just said, I don't go for this. I think I can hit. I hit on everyone but that one. I don't know when they scored, but I was like, what? Wisconsin got me. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Guy did all first half. And I was like, oh my God. Sometimes it's just the thrill of playing poker. I mean, playing gambling. You know, I probably wasted a lot of money that way. But you know what, though? Your boy was absolutely right about Ole Miss and Arkansas. I hit on both of them today when he said that they thought the spreads were too low in those two games.
He did. He said like 20 and 25, 25 points on both of them, something like that.
Yeah, I think the Ole Miss one, I think he said like he thought it was about 20. That is kind of weird this year. Because like even Clemson, I'm like, they're playing awful. I'm like, yo, how are they a 15-point favorite over Boston College? I mean,
I'm with you.
I mean, I think everybody's waiting for. I bet against. I mean, I took Boston College in that game.
Yeah.
Because I said there ain't no way Clemson scoring 15 points. But I got that 5.5 with Florida State and Syracuse. I didn't understand that spread either. So I did pretty good today.
Good. I think
outside of that one little parlay,
I didn't like tear it up, but if somebody would have listened to my picks, they would have made money. That's for sure. I think I was like 12 and 7 against the spread.
I figure out why I can't get them for it. I need to find out why. I give you credit because I had called earlier, and the one guy I had an emergency, so I had to go take care of real fast. But I heard the one guy, he was absolutely right. You made a lot of people money this week. And that's why everybody support Mark Rogers TV. Because, you know, you did a great job, you and your team. I can't remember the guy's name, but y'all did a great job today, man. I ain't never hit like that before.
Well, I hope that people subscribe and follow me for other reasons than betting advice, because I'm not guaranteeing my betting advice. I make these picks quick. I don't like sit here and study it for 4 hours. I would like to do that someday. I would love to take out, because I predicted better years ago when I would take the time. I would take a few hours and I would really go through the games and really lock in on it. I'm just picking them.
Well, and a lot of them, you come up right. I mean, I don't. I'll admit I don't follow you all the time, but you know, I know. I guess I'm an ACC country. I can tell you that when the ACC, I like how's Carolina and Duke gonna score 73 points? I didn't see that happening. Like, I'm more familiar with the ACC team. Like, I admit this. Like, I didn't think that I took Alabama and Ole Miss to go 41.5. But then when I sat back and thought about it, this is Nick Saban. After last year, he gonna come out with something to stop these guys, or he won't get them. Defense won't get embarrassed. He slowed down the game. I don't know what coverage he ran, but I watched a lot of the game, and I was like, man, Nick Saban came up with something and stopped them like he usually do, and it slowed down the game. And I don't think nobody scored till like what it was 8 minutes ago in the first quarter, and you know, he just slowed down the game. I should have went with the under, but hindsight's 20/20. He's water under the bridge now. Mm-hmm. But like I said, I done hit a lot. But yeah, but that Boston College and Clemson game, I knew that was going to happen. Like, I knew Louisville and Wake Forest was going to score a lot of points. So, but hey, it is what it is. You don't bet unless you have it to bet. So that's what I tell everybody. I tell people that on my channel, don't bet unless you have it. Let me ask you about NC State.
Yes.
Do you see them losing 2 more games in the ACC? Sometimes it's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde.
Oh, I don't think that they're ever that good. Yeah, I see them losing 2 games in the ACC. They could have lost tonight. Right. Not that would have been an ACC game. And there's another easy selection I made. I took the 19 points with Louisiana Tech.
Right, yeah, that's like a Louisiana Tech gave Mississippi State a hard time. I wasn't even thinking about it. I just always think that for some reason that State is gonna pull it together and go out. Just like I think Florida State, like last weekend, was gonna beat Louisville, and we see what happened. Louisville won the game, but I know there's picks like that. You know, sometimes you gotta look at all of it and see what we're gonna do. But the one game that got me though, Houston and Tulsa. I had took Tulsa to win that game. I think it was like 3 points. I went back and looked at their schedule. I think I told you this yesterday. I was dead wrong on that one, man. I said, man, how did I miss that one? I mean, I haven't seen Houston play all year. But Houston was struggling with Navy, who at that time was 0-3. And they played Grambling State, and then I think they played somebody else who wasn't that good. And I was like, man, so Tulsa might have been losing because they had a hard schedule. Then they went on and got blown out by Houston at Tulsa. And I was like, man, I was really shocked at that game. What was the final score in the Baylor and Oklahoma State game?
Hang on just a second. I was going to give you the NC State schedule. So let me give that to you real quick, and then I'll look up the other score. NC State goes to Boston College next week. Then they go to Miami. Then they got Louisville, at Florida State, at Wake Forest, Syracuse, North Carolina. I think they'll lose 2 games.
Yeah. But if Clemson don't get the offense together, it really don't matter. And because, I mean, Wake Forest can score. I don't think none of them guys that they're going to play the rest of the year had the defenses that State or Georgia has. And really, State, like I said, they missed a lot of opportunities with State. So, I mean, that's going to be interesting. They might get away without talented some of these teams that they're going to play down the rest of the year. But DJ don't fix his throwing motion because it seems like they fixed the offensive line. When I was watching the game, I think the guy on the first long run just took a bad angle. But, I mean, like I tell people, this college football year is probably the most exciting that we've seen in a while because everybody's losing to everybody. Because I don't know who else could beat Ohio State outside of Michigan. But what happened to Michigan beats Ohio State this year? Are they done? Will they get in the playoffs? Because let's go ahead and say Bama now, Alabama and Georgia's getting in. I don't see nobody beating Georgia this year outside of Alabama. And if Alabama and Georgia play each other, I don't really see anybody beating Alabama. So they play in the SEC championship game. They still going to be ranked 1 and 2 or 1 and 3. So those 2 positions are already gone. So I mean, I'm just worried about Clemson finishing strong and making the ACC championship game. So,
well,
does Miami still hold the record for the most consecutive wins at home at 47?
Oh, that's a great question. I think they do, but for some reason, I thought that came up here recently in the last few years where somebody, would it have been Alabama, would have been, Alabama hasn't lost a game at home since, they haven't lost one since the Ole Miss game, right? Or they lost to Ole Miss in 2014 at home.
They lost to LSU at home, didn't they?
Yeah, they lost to LSU in 2019. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, I don't know for sure, but that sounds right.
Well, because I was about to say, I don't know. I know Clemson won't get it this year, but I don't see Clemson bringing anybody to their home stadium, on a home game in the next couple of years with the amount of talent they're recruiting. I know they got to get some stuff together with DJ, but they might be able to break that Miami record in 3 years.
You're still thinking 3 years in advance. You guys beat Boston College by 6 points tonight, holding them out of the end zone when they fumbled the ball.
I know. But my point is, I understand that. And I'm the first one to tell you, and I go back to what I said after the LSU game in 2019. There's something really wrong with Clemson's offensive line and play calling. Now, knowing that, I think Dabo figured that out. That's why we didn't see Will Putnam tonight at right guard, and they started a person that actually plays center at center. They moved Barkhurst, who actually played guard, to guard. So I think Dabo's gonna figure it out. I mean, like I said, it's a long way. They got a bye next week. Then they got Syracuse, who's really good this year. When I say really good, they're decent for Syracuse. And then you got Pitt at home, Pitt on the road, who's very good. Now, let me ask you this. If Pitt wins out and make it to the ACC championship game, because they beat Clemson at Pitt, what are their chances of getting to the Final Four? Whatever we call it.
They'd only have one loss. It would be a really bad loss, but they'd only have one loss, and they would have what good wins? They would have Clemson, and they would have. Do you consider Tennessee a good win? Tennessee and whoever's going to be the second and third best teams in the division. That's going to be, and they always play Syracuse in the other division, so that's not a good win. I don't know who the other team is off the top of my head that they play in the other division, but it's not going to be.
It'll be something. Oh, they got Clemson and
we could talk about all sorts of teams if they win out, but to think about these kind of teams like Pitt and Wake Forest winning out at this point, let's wait another 3 or 4 weeks. And if they're able to survive another 3 or 4 weeks, then maybe we can have the conversation. But right now at 5-0 for Wake Forest and only 4-1 for Pitt, if they're capable of losing to Western Michigan, I don't have a whole lot of faith that Pitt's going to win out. All right, DeAndre, I better move on here.
Yeah. Okay, Mark, you have a good night.
Appreciate the call. Thanks, man. All right. I had a couple people on the line that in the live chat that said that they were either on hold or it was a busy signal, because it basically puts 3 people on hold and then it's a busy signal, I believe, for everybody else. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line?
Hey, good evening, Mark. My name's Andrew, first-time caller, and I love listening to your show. How are you?
I am doing great. Andrew, I appreciate you calling tonight. What's on your mind?
I had a great day watching college football. I'm a diehard Georgia Bulldogs fan. I was really happy to see Georgia's performance against Arkansas. I pretty much bet a house payment on them to cover the spread, so I wasn't surprised that they beat Arkansas. I had them winning by 24, though, so a 37-0 victory was something really special to see. Second shutout in a row. Georgia's looking really good, and I've been watching analysis all across the internet since the game, and it seems pretty conventional that a lot of people think, Alabama and Georgia are the 2 best teams, which I agree with wholeheartedly. And, anyone that wants to say that Georgia is better than Alabama right now, that's fine, and I'm not going to argue with them. But as a Georgia fan, I won't be satisfied with the season until Georgia plays and beats Alabama. I don't know what's going to happen the rest of the year, but a national championship as a Georgia fan would mean as much as it could mean only if Georgia gets a chance to play Alabama and hopefully gets a chance to play and beat them twice.
Okay. Well, I understand your position because I liken it to, I don't know if you're a baseball fan, but the Boston Red Sox having been the stepchild to the New York Yankees for years and years and years. And obviously they had not won a World Series since 1918 and the curse of the Bambino and the whole thing. And then they finally won a World Series in 2004, and they did it by getting through the New York Yankees, and that made it even more historic and meaningful, etc. So I get it. But if something inexplicably happened to Alabama this season, Auburn, who just beat LSU tonight, turned out to be the best team in the division and beat Alabama, and Alabama did not get to the SEC championship game, and it was somebody else like Auburn, let's say, and you beat Auburn instead in the SEC championship game, and Alabama was not in the playoff, and you won a national championship for the first time since 1980, that would not be satisfying. You would not rejoice in that.
Of course I would. I think what I said was the national championship can only mean as much as a national championship could mean if Georgia wins it through Alabama. Of course, I would love to see Georgia win a national championship. And it doesn't matter if they're going to play Iowa or Penn State or the ACC champ or, maybe Ohio State coming out of the Big Ten. I don't know. But I would love to see Georgia beat Alabama. And every week that goes by, I believe that Georgia is legitimately a much better team than Alabama. I mean, I think that by the end of the regular season, people are going to look back and say, yeah, that 37-0 victory by Georgia over Arkansas was great. I don't know if anyone's going to remember that, it was played with our backup quarterback, and we won that game all on the ground. And if they're talking about a matchup between Alabama and Georgia, you know, it's going to be considered, if it's the first time they've played, you know, that they're going to be even teams. But I think that Georgia right now is far and away a better team than Alabama, but they have to prove it.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything that you've said, that Alabama and Georgia are playing the best football in the country. And if you had to make a distinction between the two, Georgia is playing devastating football. It's even for as good as Alabama's playing, and they just played a really good Ole Miss team, and they dismantled them 28-0 in the first half. That Georgia's done it against Clemson. They've done it against, not that South Carolina is a really good team, but in the context of the SEC, they're still a top 40 or 50 team in the country, probably something in that range. And then they destroyed UAB, who's a solid group of 5 team. And then, of course, this display against Arkansas today was just super impressive. Yeah, I would agree. Georgia is playing better football than Alabama, and that is saying a ton, because I have no criticism of Alabama's play whatsoever. Anything else, man?
Yeah, I know it always seems too early to start talking about the playoffs, but with as happy as I was to see Georgia win today, I was almost equally as happy to see Notre Dame lose, so that they can't spoil the party that they have spoiled in years past by keeping other legitimate teams out of the playoffs. I am, as I'm looking ahead, am imagining a nightmare scenario where somehow either NC State or Wake Forest come out of the ACC undefeated.
NC State's
Penn
already
State
lost.
or
It could
Iowa.
only be Wake Forest.
Okay, sorry about that. Wake Forest comes out of the ACC undefeated. Penn State or Iowa comes out of the Big Ten undefeated. And then Cincinnati continues their season with no opposition and remains undefeated, while Alabama and Georgia go undefeated into the SEC championship game. I've heard your take on the college football playoff committee in the past, and I agree that there are a lot of flaws in a lot of the decisions and decision processes that they have. In a situation where you've got those 5 teams and 4 of them post-championship week would have no losses, and 1, if Alabama and Georgia do go undefeated, would have that 1 loss. Is there a justification to be made to put the 4 undefeated teams into the playoff and leave either Alabama or Georgia out with just the resume that they've built through these first 5 weeks?
Through the first 5 weeks? Well, we're playing a full college football season. So basically your question is, if we get to the end, and I'm just going to fill in the blanks.
What I'm saying is,
go ahead.
I'm saying that I think Alabama and Georgia have already done enough through the first 5 weeks that even if that situation were to come in the end, that they should a 1-loss team, either Alabama or Georgia, should get the nod over an ACC champ, undefeated Wake Forest, for example. Probably over an undefeated Big Ten champ or undefeated Cincinnati. That's my opinion. But I don't know if that would happen.
Okay, so what are you asking me?
Do you see if all 5 of those teams go undefeated into championship week, and
yes,
coming out of it, they're also undefeated, and then you've got Alabama or Georgia with a loss, would Alabama and Georgia still get in?
So let's say
based on the decision
yes,
of the committee.
The Big Ten champions undefeated, the ACC champions undefeated, then you've got the Alabama-Georgia winner, and then you've got the loser with 1 loss, and you've got Cincinnati undefeated. Cincinnati's out. Or the committee may have or the committee may really dissect Wake Forest versus Cincinnati. That's an interesting comparison to make.
Yeah, and that's how I would want it to go too. But it's a nightmare scenario for me because I don't trust the committee to actually have that sort of sense, common sense, and say that yes, Alabama and Georgia are better or are two of the top 4 teams. They may just say we've got 4 undefeated teams remaining, all of whom
no, I wouldn't worry about that. Now, I would worry about that if that's Oklahoma. That's a different. Throw out Cincinnati for a second. Take your scenario, but input Oklahoma as an undefeated Big 12 champion, and there you would have cause for concern. If you want Alabama and Georgia both to be in the playoff.
Well, I'm just going to have to keep my fingers crossed then because, well, I guess it won't matter really because like I said, I'd rather see Georgia win a national championship going through Alabama. But anyway, thanks, Mark. Have a good night.
You have a good night as well. You're not necessarily going to like what I would decide because if there were 4, if let's say Oklahoma, Ohio State, or whomever in the Big Ten and Wake Forest would be undefeated, then I would put all 3 of them in over a runner-up in the SEC with 1 loss because this is the reason we play. This is the reason we have conferences, and this is the reason we play games, is to determine. And if a team can't go undefeated and make the playoff, then we might as well just say, you know what, I'm going to select whatever teams I want. Because if we're going to say, Wake Forest, you just won the ACC and you won all your games and you're 13-0 and you're not going to the playoff, or Iowa, you're undefeated and you went 13-0 and you just beat Ohio State, Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa State, all these teams, and you're not going to go to the playoff, then because Georgia's better, then what are we doing? Why are we playing games? If we want to go back through the history of college football and the playoff era in particular, I can make all sorts of decisions on who's better. The 2015 Ohio State team should have been in the playoff because they were just better. The 2019 Alabama team should have been in the playoff just because they were better. They didn't earn it, but they were better. So they should have been in the playoff. We could do that and say, we don't care if teams go 10-2. We just think they're better. So put them in. Welcome to the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
This is Chris from East Texas.
Hey, Chris. What's going on?
Hey, I talked to you last week. Hey, just enjoying a nice Saturday of college football. I called you last week, and we talked about the Spencer Rattler stuff in the building last week. We had a good conversation about that. It was a very informative conversation, I believe. First off, hey, shout out to Florida State. Finally got that first dub.
Yeah, they did. Barely, but they got it.
It's been a while. You know, I kind of felt like Florida State forgot what it was like to win a game. I kind of wanted to talk about Jimbo Fisher.
Okay.
The guy earlier you were talking to, he kind of alluded to it. There was a graph going around this week, and believe it or not, Jimbo Fisher and Kevin Sumlin have the exact same record through the first 40 games as coach of Texas A&M. Believe it or not.
Yeah, I believe it. I made that statement about an hour ago. I heard that same thing today.
But you know, leave it to Aggie to overpay for a coach who brings whatever quarterback they have out there on the field trying to do backwards passes in the end zone tonight. Not real sure what he was doing, but I honestly believe the quarterback that A&M has currently playing for them might be the worst quarterback in the FBS right now.
I understand he's not
joking.
playing
I'm
well.
not
You need to watch a little bit more FBS football. Check out some New Mexico games, some UTEP games. You might want to check out Kansas is playing. The last I checked, they hadn't scored against Iowa State tonight. So you may want to check out a few other. I get your point. The worst in the SEC. I'm pretty sure of that.
It's coming from a guy who played quarterback his whole football career through school, high school, and all that. He might have the worst throwing motion I've ever seen in my life. The first time I saw him throw when he came in against Colorado, it looks like his arm is in like a square motion when he throws. Almost like a Phillip Rivers, but it's like 10 times worse as Phillip Rivers. And I'm like, this is who Jimbo Fisher's recruits? Like, this is what Jimbo Fisher brings into the mighty Aggies now in the SEC? Ooh.
Well,
like,
I
really?
do understand your point about Phillip Rivers, but he is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, well, Phillip Rivers made the shot put throw look majestic. This guy at A&M is making the shot put throw look horrendous.
Well, you know that the scouting report.
Phillip Rivers threw.
You know that the scouting report on Zach Calzada versus Haynes King was that Haynes King was the better athlete, and Calzada had by far the better arm. That's what the scouting report was.
Well, poor Aggie. They got a long way to go. And with Texas and Oklahoma coming into the SEC, it ain't going to get no better for them, because that's a lot of the reason why Aggie left the Big 12 is because Big Brother Texas and Big Bully Oklahoma was dominating them in the recruiting game. And it's going to go right back to that. And I don't give Jimbo Fisher, after Texas and Oklahoma come into the SEC, I give him 4 to 5 years and he's out of A&M.
4 to 5 years. That's a eternity in college football.
After Texas and Oklahoma enter the SEC, Jimbo Fisher will be gone as the Aggies coach. And that's the maximum that I'm saying. I just don't think he's as good. He rode the coattails of Jameis Winston at Florida State. I just don't think Jimbo is actually that great of a coach, honestly. He's had plenty of years to prove it at A&M, and he is on the same level as Kevin Sumlin. Kevin Sumlin rode the coattails of Johnny Football at A&M. And, I mean, Jameis Winston's a little bit better of a pro quarterback than Johnny Manziel was, I guess.
I'm losing my memory here. Was Dennis Franchione at Texas A&M right before Sumlin? Who was there right before Sumlin? Or it was the Packers. It was the Packers coach. Can't think of his name.
Sumlin was the coach when Johnny Manziel was.
Well, I know that
quarterback.
I'm saying prior to Sumlin, was that the Green Bay Packers coach?
Sumlin,
Sherman.
That was Francione. Oh, Sherman. Yeah, Sherman.
Then Sherman. Yeah.
Sherman. Yeah, because Sherman lost the last game between Texas and Texas A&M. Yeah, Sherman was there, and I just don't think Fisher is it at A&M. You know, A&M can keep throwing them dollars at Fisher like he's great, but you know,
I would agree, sir.
That's how
I would agree. That's how it's shaping up right now.
But
anything else?
I wanted to also, yes, it's time.
Okay.
It took us. When did the college football playoffs start? In 2014.
Yes.
7 years later, it's time to start saying a group of 5 team is going to make it into the college football playoff. Cincinnati, with that win tonight, I don't think they really have a serious threat down the road. Maybe SMU with Tanner Mordecai, I don't know. It's time to seriously start thinking about a group of 5 team in the college football playoffs this year.
Well, we've been thinking about that since the offseason, so that's not a new thought to me.
Well, it's a serious thought, and it's time to write it down in your prediction books as a solidified thing now.
Oh, it's solidified. I don't know that it's solidified.
I believe so. I don't
solidified.
think there's a team that. Well, no, but obviously in college football anything can happen. But this is who Cincinnati wanted to play to get in this situation, and they conquered those tests in the early part of this season. Now they have conference play. SMU, I guess, is their hardest opponent left, and they play them at home. I just don't see them having an issue the rest of the way. And I believe Cincinnati, they deserve to get in as the number 4 team in the playoffs.
They deserve it if they win all their games.
Run the table.
If they run the table.
Yeah,
and,
if they run the table.
Like you, I would not be surprised if they did run the table. But at the same time, we see games every week that we didn't expect to play out. So I would also not be surprised if they tripped up.
I wouldn't be surprised either, just because of how college football functions. But also, college football playoff, they want to rack in that money.
You think Cincinnati's bringing money? You think that they would select Cincinnati?
No.
Okay.
No. Say there's a 1-loss Big 10, 1-loss Big 12.
Yes.
Team that's right on the outside.
Yeah.
Would they choose them or Cincinnati for number 4?
They would
if
choose
Cincinnati's
them.
Undefeated.
They've already done it.
I sure hope they don't, because I think Cincinnati's proven, even last year in the Peach Bowl against Georgia, Cincinnati lost that game against Georgia. Cincinnati should have won that game against Georgia last year. And I think Cincinnati's proven that they belong and they can beat the big boys. They proved it tonight. I mean, they absolutely controlled that whole game against Notre Dame.
Yes, they scheduled 2 difficult games on paper. Indiana on the road, Notre Dame on the road. Okay. Indiana's proven not to be that good. Penn State just shut out Indiana tonight. So Indiana is not that good. That's not Cincinnati's fault. That's just Indiana's proven not to be that good. My point is that most college football observers, ever since Notre Dame struggled against Florida State on opening night, has basically been talking down Notre Dame, that they're really not that good. And now suddenly, since Cincinnati beat them, they're suddenly good. I don't think that Cincinnati necessarily belongs in the playoffs just because they beat Notre Dame. Notre Dame's probably a top 15 to 20 team in the country. And I think that there's a large separation between the top couple teams in the country and the top 20 teams in the country. But if Cincinnati wins all their games and there are not 4 champions with no losses, then yes, they should make it into the playoff. I guess the system is not structured in a way that we know what the determining factors are. That's the problem with the system. The system's not objective. It's a bunch of people going in a room deciding who should be in a playoff. It's not even a playoff. Technically, it's an invitational. A playoff, the NFL runs a playoff. They have a set guideline. All you have to do is open up an NFL record, and the teams with the 6 best records make the playoffs. And then if there's a tie, if there's a head-to-head, then that team makes it. Then they go to conference record. And there's a systematic way for the playoff to be determined. Well, we don't have that. We have 13 people that go in a room and come out and tell us who just made the playoff. And then they talk their way around whatever questions we ask them. Yeah, so
it's mainly athletic directors.
All right.
Of the big schools.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the call. I better move on here.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll talk to you
All right.
soon. Thanks for calling.
Yes, sir.
All right, let's take these last two, and then I'll work on the top 25 that actually makes sense. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Hello? Hello?
Hey, Mark. J-Dub calling in from Des Moines. How we doing tonight?
Hey, I'm doing great. What's going on?
Hey, I'm a Bama grad, so obviously very pleased with how things went in Tuscaloosa today.
Yeah.
But I'd like to take us back to Friday night. And get your thoughts on the Hawkeyes. Is Iowa a legitimate threat to make the playoffs, do you think?
Well, I think the odds are still against them, but are they a threat? Yes, they're a threat as much as anybody else in the Big Ten is. They're playing better defense than anybody in the Big Ten, and they're playing as well as anyone in the Big Ten in addition to Penn State. I believe that Penn State and Iowa are playing the best football of anyone in the Big Ten, and Michigan could join them if they continue to play the way they did today. I think Ohio State's the most talented team in the Big Ten, but they have yet to show that until today.
Well, we'll find a whole lot out next Saturday at 3 o'clock because Penn State comes to Kenny Stadium. And that'll be a wild scene because with Oregon's loss today, you're going to probably have Penn State and Iowa both inside the top 5.
Yep.
So that'll be an insane scene in Iowa City. And then just what a another crazy wild day in college football. I mean, I think I'm probably with the majority of the people who are listening in right now. You kind of expected Oregon to quack up somewhere along the way, but they did it today against Stanford. I'm not a believer in the Pac-12. If we have a playoff situation where there are a couple of one-loss teams that are champions, if you've got a one-loss Big Ten champion, let's say Wake Forest doesn't go 12-0, but they go 11-1 and win the ACC. I just think, despite the win over Ohio State, a loss to Stanford, and just the general reputation of the Pac-12, I think that conference really took a hit today.
So for the last few weeks, I produced a video where I compared the conferences and I ran through all the records and the games and so forth. There is no question that the Pac-12 is by far the worst conference in America. So I totally agree with you. But the Pac-12 has one win that could prove decisive. And of course, that's Oregon winning at Ohio State. So if Ohio State wins the Big Ten and Oregon wins the Pac-12, and Oregon has the same record and has that head-to-head win in Columbus, then it's hard to argue Ohio State, even though the Big Ten is miles ahead of the Pac-12 as a conference.
I agree. I mean, like you said a couple times already this evening, I mean, why are you playing the games? Head-to-head has to matter. If you're going to compare two teams and they've played each other, that's got to count for something. You know, otherwise, just go ahead and hand out invitations, the second week of October,
I think Ohio State's a better team than I think that Ohio State's a better team than Oregon, but what I think shouldn't matter. They played. Oregon won the game fair and square. They should get that nod over Ohio State.
Yeah, at the moment, obviously, I'm biased because I'm an Alabama grad. I think Georgia is probably more talented position by position than Alabama is. I think we're looking at two 12-0 teams going to meet in Atlanta.
Yep.
But I just want to say to the Georgia fans, you've got hang on a minute before you get too excited, because you still have to prove it. They don't have. I know they say, well, what is 3 years ago? What does that got to do with this year? trends to me matter, and Georgia hasn't proven that they can play a full 60 minutes and beat Alabama. They haven't done it 6 times in a row. They haven't done it. And until they do, I think you have to give all other things equal. I think you have to give the nod to Alabama, who's 9-0 in Atlanta, on and on and on. That the SEC title game, if they're both 12-0, that's, to me, that's your de facto national championship.
Sure looks like it.
May not end up being that way. I just think that right now, those two teams have separated themselves from the rest of the pack. I think there are a lot of quality teams that are out there. Like you said, that next group down is kind of shifting and moving and fighting amongst themselves and flipping around back and forth. But I just think that there's a gulf in between 1 and 2 and everybody else. But hey, I know you've got other callers. I'll step out of the way. Always great, and enjoy your show. Thanks for taking my call, Mark.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for the call. Have a good night. Yeah, again, I'll go on record as saying that I'll say the same thing that everybody else is saying that has any type of college football sense. Alabama and Georgia are by far the best teams in the country. That could change. It probably won't. If we were sitting here right now and let's say Oregon and North Carolina had been playing the best football and they were the only undefeated teams that were also playing just dominant football, well, I would be saying, well, they've played the best football to date, but I can see things changing. That's different than Alabama and Georgia backing up what they've been doing for years with the talent that they have on the roster and then also showing it on the field. So they're just confirming what we already know about their talent. So I don't see things changing. I think that there's only one team in the country. I may be proven wrong, and I'm not saying that they're going to do it, but I think that there's only one roster in the country that's capable of, if they pull it together, and I think the odds are against them. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to do it, but it's possible that Ohio State on a given day would be the only team that could compete with either one of them. Again, I'm not making that prediction. I'm just saying that they have the capability, potentially. All right, welcome to the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Then we've got 2 callers after that, and we're going to cut it right there.
Well, I just want to let you know, Mark Rogers, I see that potential in that team, being an Ohio State Buckeye fan.
Well, let's not get too giddy about today now.
Well, okay. I'm just saying that there's progress there.
Oh, yes.
I'm just going to say, Mark, there's progress, and I'm happy that C.J. Stroud put together a complete game and played really well, and I'm happy to see the young guys on defense looking, really well. I was one that said, you know what, let's build the offense around the running game. I called you about that. But you know what? I think C.J. Stroud took a step forward today, which is positive.
Yep.
He put together a complete game. And all we saw was like moments of, really good play. Against Minnesota, we saw really good moments of really good play. Against Oregon, we saw moments of really good play. I thought he put it together today. And you know what? Against a pretty good Rutgers defense. Rutgers can play defense. So I didn't expect us to go in there and drop 50-some points on them. I don't know.
45 in the first half. That's crazy.
Right, exactly. Right. And so I think that there's really good things to take from this game if you're an Ohio State fan. Now, I will say this, Mark, and I think you completely agree with me. The Big Ten is a really good conference.
Yes.
It's not the SEC, but the SEC can no longer make fun of the Big Ten. You can't call us, we're weak. We don't have players that can run very fast anymore. We have a really good conference, and we have 5 good football teams in this conference. And I think it's going to be a real race this year. What do you think, Mark?
Well, I don't think at any point that a real SEC fan who understands football would have been making fun of the Big Ten. I think they could have said,
well, they did it for years, Mark. They did it for years.
Well, they did it for
Mark.
years,
They
but I'm
made-
talking about reasonable people. I'm not talking about morons.
Okay.
That they could say,
All right.
that they could always say, we're a better conference, but they couldn't say you're a joke, because then they're not paying attention to the NFL draft selections. They're not paying attention to bowl results. They're not paying attention to non-conference results. And not that they haven't had the upper hand, but it's not been a joke. It's never been a joke. It's a narrative that the national media puts out there because they like to just they like things to be simple and simply explained. So saying that the SEC is dominant over everyone is an easy tagline just to put out there without anyone actually doing some thinking and research to say, true, but it's more complex than that. That's why we're here, David, having these kind of conversations that make sense, because we look at the actual results on the field and what's happened. And yes, the SEC has been the best conference in college football since roughly 2005 or 6. But the Big Ten has generally been the second, not always, but generally been the second best conference, and sometimes been a close second, sometimes a not so close second.
Yep.
Go ahead, Mark.
And I was just going to say about the performance today. Again, I try to take a balanced look at it, that it's one game and it's against a marginal opponent, but it's against a capable opponent that just played a team that then in turn went to Madison, Wisconsin, and somewhat dominated a game against Wisconsin, but could not do that against the Rutgers team that Ohio State just trampled, put up 45 points in the first half, just sliced and diced them with no issue. And the Rutgers team does not have a prolific, dynamic offense by any stretch, but they've had a productive offense.
No.
And Ohio State really had no issue shutting down their offense. Again, they scored once in the first half when it mattered at all. So, yeah, there's real progress
I would
there.
just say that. No, I agree, Mark. I think C.J. Stroud took a step forward. I love our skill players. I think our offensive line is top-notch. I like this offense a lot. And I do think that playing the young players on defense it's been a net positive for this team. Playing the younger defensive linemen, I think they're getting some linebackers who can play. So, I see a lot of positives here going forward. But you know what? We will not know about this team until the schedule toughens up, which is where I was going with earlier about the Big Ten being a tougher conference, because once we get into October, we see Penn State, we see Michigan State into November. And I got to say this, Mark, Steve Dace in your conversation is going to be quite interesting this week, because I tell you what, that is an improved football team. I'm not saying it's a really good football team, but it's an improved football team. Wouldn't you say, Mark?
He is going to have to be hopeful and optimistic. He is going to be forced to be optimistic for the first time since we started having these conversations, because yes, Wisconsin is flawed. Yes, their offense is awful, but they're still a Big Ten football team. It's still a difficult place to play. They still have an excellent defense, and Michigan went in there and took care of business, and they played a competitive half, and then they took off from there. And when they couldn't run the ball, they turned to a passing game, something that's been asked of them, something that we've all talked about. Can Michigan throw the ball when they need to? And they did it against, a team that the record may show as a bad opponent, but a defense that, if anyone has any sense, knows that Wisconsin has a top 10 defense in the country, and Michigan made plays against them and won the game decidedly.
I agree. I'll just say this. They have a good defense. They have a running game, and maybe their quarterback is starting to come to the party, which, would make them even more interesting going forward. But, I tell you what, I think this conference is going to be totally interesting going forward. I cannot wait for Iowa, Penn State next week. I think it's going to be a great football game. I'll tell you what, though, I will say this. We've remarked about Sean Clifford. Has he taken a step forward for Penn State as a quarterback?
Absolutely.
His inconsistencies, we've talked about that before. He seems to be getting better, Mark.
Yeah, he's a better thrower of the ball, makes better decisions, knows when to run and when not to run better than he did last year and certainly the year before.
I agree. But I will say this, Mark. Your other caller was absolutely right. I think you are too. I think Georgia and Alabama are clearly the two best teams in the country. I will say that right now. I will say this: if you're Georgia, if you cannot get Alabama this year, when are you ever going to get Alabama? Though I just wonder about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm going to say something
Now,
that's going to.
Go ahead.
I'm going to say something, though, when we compare the Big Ten and the SEC that a lot of people are going to jump on because our eyes tell us that Alabama and Georgia are the best. Therefore, I guess that transcends through the entire conference. But I'm talking about the conferences top to bottom. What Georgia and Alabama have done is they've gone out and beaten Miami and Clemson. How good are they? Well, Miami's not very good. Clemson's still, I believe, a good team, but nothing close to what they've been, obviously. This has now been proven against games against Georgia Tech, North Carolina State, and BC. Clemson's not a very good team. They're a top 25 team, probably, I guess. So we are now basing the dominance of these teams or judging these conferences based on playing themselves. Based on playing the other conferences, really, the Big Ten results are just as good, if not better, than the SEC results outside the conference.
Yeah, I actually think the Penn State win. I mean, maybe Auburn after the win tonight, maybe Auburn's going to have a better record than people think they are, this year.
Yeah.
So that thing is going to look pretty good for Penn State going forward, I would think. I mean, I could see Auburn as a 9-3 football team. What do you think?
That schedule is still pretty rugged. They've already lost one game. They've got Georgia next week. They've got Alabama. So there's your 3 losses already without even counting Texas A&M, Mississippi State, and Ole Miss. Their schedule's brutal, but not so much looking at their schedule. I think that they could go 7-5, and even though no one's going to rank them in the top 25, they could be one of the top 25 teams in America.
That's true. That's true. Maybe 8-4 is about right. I went a little bit too far saying 9-3. Maybe 8-4 would probably be their best case scenario. But I will just say this: I think Georgia and Alabama are the 2 best teams. But I do think that there's other programs coming into play right now. I think Ohio State's going to get better as the season goes along. But I think the Big Ten is a really good conference. I will say this though: Cincinnati is going to be the monkey in the wrench, Mark. We talked about it before the season started. They've got the quality wins. Mark, do you see them running the table? Because I don't see anybody in their way going the rest of the season.
Well, we never see anyone in anyone's way. So I still think that there are going to be scares because we never see that. We never see that. We saw them go undefeated last year and they barely beat UCF, and they may have had another scare in there. But yes, on the surface, it appears as though they've cleared the hurdles, and they'll be a double-digit favorite in every game. Sure, they should go undefeated. I don't know what all the FPI and all of the metrics say about the probabilities, but they generally kind of temper those and hold them back. They hold the possibilities of going undefeated to be very scarce for anybody. So I don't know what they're I shouldn't even bring them up because I don't even know if it's valid.
Am I getting a vibe that Mark Rogers might be down on Cincinnati being a playoff team?
No, I'm not down. If they win all their games and there are not conference champions that have undefeated records, again, we've got a flawed system. I don't like the system. I don't like what it is.
Okay.
To where an undefeated group of 5 champion has to be compared to a 1-loss, in this case, a 1-loss ACC, Big 10, Big 12 champion, whatever. I don't know why the SEC gets left out of it, but anyway, because they're given an automatic spot. Again, that's another fallacy of the system. But yeah. Okay, let's say Iowa loses to Penn State this week. Let's say they lose 21-17. Great game, they lose.
Okay.
They win the rest of their games. They win the Big Ten championship. and we're going to compare them to Cincinnati, who beat Notre Dame, who we've seen this Notre Dame team play for 5
Notre
weeks
Dame
now.
goes.
They don't look very good. They're
let's say
they're
Notre
good.
Dame goes on and has a good season, Mark.
Okay, that's one game. That's one team, one game. Indiana's not good. They just got shut out tonight.
Right.
And that game went down to the last 2 or 3 minutes of the game. They didn't dominate Indiana by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, I could see Notre Dame going 11-1, can't you, Mark? I mean, honestly,
I can.
If Notre Dame goes 11-1,
but they still don't look that good. They barely beat
team.
Wisconsin last week. Like,
okay,
they barely beat Toledo. I don't know. They could lose to Virginia Tech or North Carolina or USC or fill in the blank. But that's, are we going to send a team to the playoff because they won one game against somebody good?
I hear you.
Versus Iowa losing to Penn State in a great game and beating, I don't know the schedule off the top of my head, but they would have wins against, Minnesota, Purdue, Wisconsin, Iowa State, Indiana, and then let's say Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game, or maybe avenge their loss against Penn State. They play such a tougher schedule than Cincinnati.
Here's what's going to help them, Mark. I could see a 2-loss ACC champion out. I could see a 2-loss Pac-12 champion out. And guess what that means?
Well, that's
SEC,
fine.
Big Ten. And that opens
I have no issue with that.
Cincinnati.
I have no issue with that.
That's what I'm saying.
I have no issue with that. I've been the guy waving my hand saying that these teams should be considered. UCF should have been in the playoff. All that. I've been saying this for years. It's just a stupid system.
Well,
the system
I agree with you. I mean,
we don't know. We have 13 people that decide it. I don't know what they're going to go by. What if Cincinnati and Wake Forest are the two teams that, and I don't think this is going to happen because Wake Forest hasn't even hit the difficult portion of its schedule. But what if Cincinnati's undefeated and Wake Forest is undefeated and that's the last spot?
Right. That's true.
There's all sorts of crazy scenarios we could cook up.
That's true. I can't see Wake Forest getting through the ACC without a couple of losses.
Yeah, their last 4 games are pretty tough. I wish Boston College would have won tonight and not kicked the ball around at the end of that game. I don't know if you saw the end of the game. They were down to the 10-yard line and they had a bad snap and fumbled. But
I did not.
Yeah, they most likely would have beaten Clemson and stayed undefeated. All right.
Yeah, that ACC is a hot mess. But
it's awful.
All right, Mark, it's a pleasure.
Thank you, David. I appreciate it. Let me take these last 2 calls here. And first, let me honor these super chats because I appreciate them so much. Get Business Credit. Thank you so much for that. Again, Mr. Mark, ESPN. I don't know why you put ESPN. Maybe I worked there. Maybe you deserve the support. Otherwise, I don't need to be affiliated with ESPN in any such way. It was a good time of my life for 19 years. But anyway, you deserve the support. 2 a.m. taking phone calls. Yes, 2:54 now. New major fan will be here next time. Are you live every Saturday? I am. Yes. Shoot me an email. I don't know what your email address is. Why don't you shoot me an email? MarkRogersTV@gmail.com. I'm not leaving yet. Just wanted to say, keep up the good work. Will you share your channel on my channel? Will share your channel on my channel. I appreciate that so much. Keep up the good work. Get Business Credit. Thank you so much for that. That is very kind of you. I want to catch up with this other super chat before we take. Oh, we got 2 more. We got TH3 pounds, I don't know, whatever that is. Unforgiven. How do you feel about the Spartans? Definitely a huge improvement from last year. 5-0. As a Michigan State fan, I'm so happy getting those 2015 vibes. I think that Michigan State has one of the best. I said it at the time, even though it didn't receive a lot of fanfare, that they received one of the best transfers in the nation in Kenneth Walker at Wake Forest. I thought that that would be a great addition for a team that has not had a good running back since maybe LJ Scott's freshman campaign. They have not had a running back that they could really lean on since then, and really not a premier running back since Le'Veon Bell. So Kenneth Walker, tremendous addition. The offensive line is playing much better. I love Mel Tucker's attitude, us against the world. We fight. We're tougher than you. We're going to beat you up. Come to our place. We're going to beat you up. We'll go to Miami. We'll be tougher than you in the fourth quarter. In the heat and humidity, we'll show that we're tougher than the Miami guys are. I love that attitude from Mel Tucker because this is an underdog program. It always has been. Mark D'Antonio built his legacy, his winning tradition on being the underdog, having that mentality that we've got to work harder than you, hit harder than you, outwork you, and we'll get it done because we're determined and we do it the right way, and we're tough, mentally tough, physically tough. I think their defense is not ultra talented, but it plays disciplined defense. I saw them play Northwestern. I saw Michigan State play Miami. I saw those two games pretty much start to finish. And I did see watch the cut down version of the Nebraska game as well. Obviously, having a offense that's not able to post one first down in the entire second half against Nebraska is a bit troublesome. Your quarterback reminds me a lot of Peyton Thorne of Brian Lewerke from years ago. Good quarterback, not a great quarterback. All right, and then we've got another get business credit. Thank you so much. I appreciate that so much. No, Mark, I said I sent you an email already. I apologize for that. I misconstrued that. But no, never knew you worked for ESPN. You just look and sound like you belong on TV. That's all. It's a good thing. Yeah, that at one point was my aspiration, and that's something that I did was broadcast sports on TV. That is no longer anything that I would want to do. I enjoy working for myself and calling my own shots and not having to work for there was a reason I left ESPN, believe me. The corporate grind was way beyond what I could put up with anymore. All right. Thank you so much for that. That is very kind of you. All right. 2 more calls. Let's knock them out right here at the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Hello? 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 Who's on the line? Going once, going twice. Okay, one more. Yeah, who's on the line here at the Voice of College Football? Hello? Oh, thought we had hello, hello, hello. One more. Let's try it one more time.
It's George.
No more double call. And we are out.
We lost it. Mark, it's George.
No, nobody calls twice. Do not have that. No, it's 3:00 in the freaking morning. No. Thank you so much for the support. Appreciate you being here. I got a lot to do. You guys are amazing. This only works because of you, not because of me. I don't do much. I just talk and watch a lot of football. You guys are the ones that support. Hit the like button, call in, tell people about it. You guys make it happen. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for all that you do. Top 25, that actually makes sense, coming out tomorrow. And then I'll do all sorts of rankings of the conferences and power rankings. I'd like to knock out all the conferences. I just got to the Big Ten last week, and I want to do all the conferences. And of course, we're going to talk to beat writers from all over the place as well. All right. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. You guys have a great night. Can't tell you how much I appreciate your support. Let's keep this thing going right here at the Voice of College Football. See you next time. Nate, I missed Nate's super chat. Well, where is that? Nate, I don't know. Whoa. There we go. Glad I saw that. Nate, thank you so much for writing in. Thank you for the super chat. That is so much appreciated. Good night, Mark. Go Blue. Next time I catch your call-in show, we are talking Michigan, and I have a Marshall University question that I want your opinion about. You're my favorite Bucknut fan. All right. I don't know that I'm going to be able to share much about Marshall football this year, but whatever the question is, hey, I'm here. And yeah, I'm not even going to go there. But thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate it. Cheryl, thanks for being here as always. And I see so many people in here. It would be impossible for me to thank everyone, but some notables. Free One, good to see you. I've never seen you before, so welcome to the Voice of College Football. C. Jenkins, Tony, #1 ND fan, Michael Stewart, Isaac McQueen, Robert Pesaturo. I believe this is the first time I've ever seen you. Welcome to the Voice of College Football. And Birdword. Cheryl, of course, you're amazing. Always here, always supporting. So I may be tomorrow, live tomorrow night. I definitely will be live on Monday. Top 25, that actually makes sense. Can't wait to work on that. We'll see you.